Today, our plan is to hear from you mostly. I'm going to spend a little bit of time giving you kind of a big picture view of what's going on in the legislature, so you know why these cuts are coming. And I think you need to know. I think you deserve to know. There's an effort, in my opinion, by the legislature to just shove all this through. And they don't want to know, they don't want you to know how we got here. They don't want you to know why these cuts are now being considered. And they also don't want you to know that we have other options. I do want you to know. I think you deserve to know. That's the way democracies work. People need to be informed. They need to get the information. Ultimately, you elect people to make decisions, but we owe it to you to come back and tell you what's going on instead of hiding the information so that we can protect ourselves. All right. I recognize a lot of people here. I know my beard probably makes me a little harder to recognize. I'm not going incognito, and I suspect there's probably lots of questions about the beard. You know, what sort of product do you use, and how long is it taking you to grow it? Is Wendy's okay with it? But I will answer those after. We'll do kind of set aside beard-related and adjacent questions, as important as they are. I'm going to spend about 20 to 30 minutes talking about some things that have been happening in the legislature, but mostly what I want to do this evening or this afternoon is just hear from families and businesses. I want to hear what sort of Medicaid services you rely on that help your family. I want to know what would happen if you lost those services, how it's going to affect your family. I think Connor mentioned we are going to videotape this. We also have a Facebook live stream that we're doing. I am going to deliver the tape to the committee chairs for health and welfare. But I will tell you, I can't promise you that it will change their minds. And if I stood up here and told you that it would, I wouldn't feel good about myself. There's something wrong with the way the government's working right now. I'm trying to figure it out, and I'm there every day. So that doesn't mean that we don't keep trying. We had a town hall at the Capitol. I don't know if you've heard about that, on Medicaid and Medicaid, the same sort of thing. We had people come testify. And this was the Democrats did this. We asked the health and welfare chairs to hold a hearing, and the JFAC chair, so that's the budget setting committee. We asked them to hold a hearing. If you're going to cut these programs, you need to hear from people, just like we're going to do this afternoon. We gave them that chance, and they declined. And so we said, all right, if you're not going to do it, and don't ask me why they wouldn't. This is what we do every time we have a bill, and especially when it affects Idahoans, we have a hearing. They didn't want to have the hearing. And so we held our own unofficial hearing. We did that, I think it was on Wednesday night. It was from 4 to 7, ended up going till 8 o'clock. There were 400 to 500 people that came to the hearing. It wasn't just, if you've been to the Capitol, it wasn't just the Lincoln Auditorium, that was packed. We filled the 3 committee rooms across the hall. 400 to 500 people at the Capitol that day to participate. We heard from families with children who require 24-hour care. They rely on Medicaid programs for financial relief and maybe even a little respite. We heard from people who navigate life without sight and rely on Medicaid programs for support to make a difficult life a little easier, people who have Down syndrome, and parents of people who have Down syndrome. And we heard from people who are permanently confined to wheelchairs. It ran the gamut. The list goes on and on. The stories I heard were difficult. And I'm not a real emotional guy. You can ask my wife, you can ask my kids. I'm it's just not the way I am. But it was hard to listen to those stories. We had a mother who testified, families like mine do not have options. There was a dad, he was a medical doctor. I think his wife had been a nurse, and he said, that he got a perfectly healthy 3-year-old daughter until she wasn't. Around the age of 3, she had a medical issue, and she was never the same. And he told us that taking away, he said, you couldn't predict what happened to our daughter, and you couldn't afford what happened to her either. Another father told us that taking away Medicaid programs from the most vulnerable population is extraordinarily cruel. And another gentleman, after reminding us that eliminating Medicaid programs only shifts cost to other governmental entities and taxpayers, said it's both irrational and immoral. My biggest takeaway, frankly, was that, but for the grace of God go I. And as my good friend, Senator Jim Guthrie said, he told our local chamber the next morning, Jim and I had been in the hallway and, just watching these families as they were navigating their way into committee rooms, and he told the chamber the next morning about what he had seen, and he said, I don't know how you could walk amongst them and not feel compassion, and if you can't, I have serious concern about you. So, again, I wish I could guarantee you that what we're doing here today is going to do the trick, that when we deliver these testimonies, that members of the legislature will change their votes. I hope it does. I can't promise you that it will. But I can promise you this. I will work hard for you every day. I get up and I work for people who are dealing with just these sorts of issues, whether it's teachers who are worried about the cuts to their classrooms because of our K through 12 budget cuts, or people dealing with these extraordinarily difficult issues. I and a bunch of other legislators over there are working hard to make sure that your voices are heard. We're doing everything we can. So, let's do this before we get into the testimony. I want to walk you through why we're in this position. If you haven't heard, and I suspect you have, it's part of the reason you're here, we are facing budget cuts. The state has imposed holdbacks. The governor has made those holdbacks permanent. And now we're looking at even deeper cuts. So we started at about 3% temporary, and then the governor turned those into permanent cuts, and now they've added a 4%, a fourth percent for this fiscal year. We're talking about the fiscal year we're in right now, so 26. We set a budget when we get to the legislature for fiscal year 27, and as of this week, we're looking at 5% cuts across the board for fiscal year 27. It's hard to explain how extraordinary those cuts are and how impactful they will be to all kinds of programs. We're talking about transportation funding. We're talking about K through 12 public education, universities, and those cuts across the board don't really explain the full impact of what's going on, because there's other cuts that are being made to different programs. It will affect just about every aspect of Idahoans' lives. You know, your favorite camping spot. There will be impacts to what camping spots are available to you, how soon they're available to you, whether the bathrooms are clean. I know in this context that seems like a small thing, but my point is they are things big and small that we're going to be dealing with. All right. So we're going to answer, how did we get here, what cuts are being proposed, and how will they affect us, and then what options do we have instead of cuts? I want you to know I'm not a terribly partisan person. It's just not the way I think. But in order for me to tell you this story, I'm going to have to talk in some partisan terms, because there is a majority party in the legislature. You may not know that, but it's about 86% Republican. And so when the majority party decides they're going to be lockstep on stuff, they are. And so if some of that creeps in, I don't want you to think I'm partisan or trying to insult anybody who might be a Republican. I'm not. I'm just trying to tell you what's going on. So you're going to be told by the Freedom Foundation and many Republicans in the legislature that the state of Idaho has a spending problem. That is not true. It's wrong. The state of Idaho has a revenue problem. Connor, let's go to slide 3. This slide right here shows you what the budgets looked like when we left in May. So the yellow line shows you the budget that we enacted as we finished the 2025 legislative session. The red line shows you how much revenue we were told that we had. And if you look at 2025, you can see that when we left with about 600 million. That's what the governor told the public. That's what the speaker told the public. That's what everybody was talking about, is we balanced our budgets and we still have 600 million. And there was a lot of chest beating, if you remember. We had done more tax cuts. We still passed our budgets. All is good. Well, it wasn't good. And I could spend 10 minutes explaining to you how we got to this position where we were saying something that was not true. But for sake of brevity, let's move to the next slide. Fiscal year starts 1 July. Almost immediately, we were seeing that the revenues were not what they were supposed to be. The revenues were overstated. And so quickly by August, it was clear, you can see that it was clear we were going to have deficits, and we can't run deficits. And every month that revenue came in, it came in lower than it was supposed to be. Now, lower than it was supposed to be, but as Lieutenant Governor Bedke says, he knew it was going to be coming in lower. He said, numbers don't lie. And so he was not surprised, and there were many of us who weren't surprised because we knew we had inflated the revenue number. So it was clear we were going to have to cut budgets. That's when the governor came out and said we're going to have to do a 3% holdback, and then very quickly, within a month or two, it was that holdback is going to be permanent, and that brings us to where we are now. So you're being told that the state of Idaho, as we got ready for this session, that we were going to have a $555 million deficit for fiscal year 27. In other words, we came to the legislature, set budgets. We were going to have to find $555 million to cut. And it could be as high as $1 billion, and I'll explain that in a second. So how can that be? Where did all this money go? Well, keep in mind, we have had surpluses for several years. Between federal money coming into the state for COVID relief and then the infrastructure programs, we had a lot of federal money coming in. And when it comes in for road projects, or you name whatever the infrastructure project was. For COVID, people were receiving that money. They would go out and buy goods. That becomes sales tax. If you got a job that was paid for by some of this money, you're paying income tax. So all this federal money, it takes a while to flow through the system. And in the meantime, it turns into tax revenue. And so the legislature worked hard because we knew that was one-time money, and once it worked through the system, we couldn't build it into the budgets, right? It was revenue, but you don't want to build it into the budgets if it's one-time money. Legislature knew that. We talked about it all the time over the last 3-4 years. And we put a bunch of money into our rainy day funds. Our rainy day fund totals stand at about $1.6 billion. That's an extraordinary amount. So those were the positives, but somewhere along the way, the Idaho legislature got lost. and I'll tell you what it looked like. Led by Speaker Moyle, the majority party convinced itself that we could afford tax cuts again and again and again. Over the last 5 years, the Idaho legislature has flattened our income tax. We used to have a graded income tax where the more you made, you paid a little more. It wasn't a lot more, but your percentage was a little more. We flattened them so that now everybody pays 5.3%. And at the same time, the Idaho legislature cut income taxes by $4 billion over the last 5 years. $4 billion. Our general fund revenue that we use for our budgets, now there's federal money and other monies, but the general fund amount for an annual budget is around $5.3 billion. Over the last 5 years, we cut $4 billion out of our general funds. So that's, and looking forward, it's about $1.1 billion less every year that we will have available to spend on schools, bridges, roads, state parks, Medicaid programs, you name it. So Idaho went from historic revenue surpluses to historic deficits because of bad fiscal management. If any legislator tells you different, tell them to show the receipts, because it was bad fiscal management. We should not be in the position that we're in right now. History is going to look back at this period of Idaho's spending and our budget management in utter disbelief. Slide 7. Last year alone, previous slide, we cut $450 million. That was last year's tax cut. We did a $50 million voucher program where we send to private schools and religious schools $50 million, and it is not accounted for. There's no oversight on how that money is spent. They don't have requirements on what it should be spent for. That is a revenue problem. It's not a spending problem. The winners of these tax cuts, by the way, just so you know, big corporations and people making $500,000 or more. A lot of you receive tax cuts. My guess is a lot of you don't even realize you did, because it was a couple $100, maybe $350. But the big winners, they know they received it. And by the way, we're not done digging. The first rule of holes is when you're in one, stop. Just this week, both chambers passed the conformity bill. Just briefly, what that is every year we look at the federal tax code and we say, to make it easier for everybody, let's make the Idaho tax code match the federal tax code. Most years it's kind of a no-brainer, it's the most boring bill that comes up, but not this year, because this year the big beautiful bill came along and it cut taxes on tips and it cut taxes on bonuses and a lot of corporate taxes. So there were all kinds of taxes. We only hear about some of them, but there were a ton of tax cuts in the big beautiful bill. If we conform at the state level, what does that mean? It means another tax cut that we can't afford. As I said, $555 million to $1 billion. The reason they were saying $555 to $1 billion is because of the big beautiful bill of tax conformity. We didn't know, we knew at least $555 million, but we didn't know what the tax conformity bill was going to cost. They are currently saying this week's bill said $155 million. That was the price tag they put on the bill. But at the same time, they acknowledged they really have no idea. They don't know. And they're not the only ones who don't know. There is so much uncertainty from the administration, the federal administration, and that's trickled down to the state, where we don't know what we're budgeting against. We don't know how much money we're truly going to have in the coffers. And so this tax conformity bill, the best estimates are $155 million to $300 million. So we could be looking at cutting budgets by about $800, $900 million to make things balance. All right. By the way, I mean, and I don't think I probably need to tell this group, but who's going to pay the price for these bad decisions? You will. I mean, it's going to be your school district, your kid's classroom, the Medicaid programs that you rely on, your neighbor who might lose their health insurance, your friend at ISU who's going to lose their job, your kid who's planning on going to Idaho State University or the University of Idaho or Boise State University, and now you find out that the program they've been wanting to go to forever is going to be capped. And so they might have to go out of state. And when they go out of state, they're going to pay out of state tuition. I could go on and on about just the small things that the Idaho legislature is not thinking about when it comes to these cuts. By the way, when we arrived in Boise in January, there were certain people there, specifically the speaker, who were working really hard to suggest cutting these budgets wasn't going to be a big deal. I don't know if you remember seeing him interview, that balancing the budget just wasn't going to be a big problem. Once again, wrong. The last time we faced empty coffers like this was in 2009 during the Great Recession. Diane and I were in the legislature serving at the time. We cut budgets to the bone. It was brutal. And I want to show you a slide. We hurt schools, people lost their jobs, they lost health care. The Idaho legislature dug itself a hole so deep that it took us 10 years to return to our public education spending to pre-recession levels. And in some areas, we still haven't recovered. So if you take a look at this graph, it shows you what happens when a state goes into a recession. This is public education, just a specific example, but you cut budgets and you can see you go from spending $10,000 plus per pupil all the way down to $6,500. And then between 2000, and that was after a recession in 2001. In 2006, we started making progress. We get to 2009, another recession, and we cut per pupil spending. And now we climb out. And you can see in 2016, around 18, Governor Little worked hard to get per pupil spending back up, more education money. And you can see it was working, and now we've hit where we are now. Where we are now is that line is going to dip again, and it's going to go down hard. And we will then try to climb out of it again for another decade. Now, those first two dips were from recessions. We aren't in a recession right now. In fact, if you listen to economists, they will tell you the Idaho economy is doing quite nicely. And we're in good shape. This is self-inflicted, what we've done here. Self-inflicted. All right. And we could go through other budgets to show you how it affected Medicaid transportation when we go through a recession. This is the chart that Freedom Foundation and a lot of Democrats who are pushing the cuts will show you. When you look at this chart, it shows you general fund growth by category. The categories are generally the different areas we spend money on in the state. So public schools, higher education, Medicaid, health and welfare. They especially don't like where the Medicaid line goes, because look at how it continues to increase. But you can see public schools. Now, so this is what they'll point to. They'll say since 2017, look at this, it's just out of control is how they describe it. What do they not take into consideration? Let's go to the next slides. This also shows you appropriations, so this shows you the money we're spending, it's climbing. Let's go to the next slide. Here's inflation. They don't take into consideration inflation. So the line you just looked at was not normalized for inflation. Let's go to the next slide. Idaho population. We have grown by 33%. 33% since 2010. If you normalize those budget expenditures using inflation and population growth, let's look at what that looks like right there. This shows you, and this is appropriations. I'm going to show you the next slide, which is expenditures. And then we'll flip back so you can see. These two slides show you appropriations are different than expenditures, but for our purposes, I think it's fine to just treat them the same. Look how little the increase in expenditures per person in the state of Idaho are. This is, as Keith Bybee, who is from Pocatello, but he's the JFAC head of budgets. He will tell you this is about as flat as can be. And what it tells you is we don't have out of control budgets. Our spending per person is conservative and flat. If you take into consideration inflation and population growth. All right. We've gone through those slides. Look, life has gotten more expensive. Everybody knows that. Inflation has affected every aspect of our lives. We've increased our population. I mentioned that. It's actually 33% over the last 20 years. That means more people driving on our roads, more people sending their kids to our schools, means more people going to our college, university, and yes, more people using Medicaid. But with all those new people, it should mean more income and sales tax going into the general fund. Unless, of course, you're the Idaho legislature and you cut general funds every year for the last 5 years into the tune of $4 billion. That is why we have a revenue problem. That is why the Idaho legislature is telling you that you're going to lose services, because they don't know how to balance their checkbook. All right. So, why would people in the Capitol suggest cutting the budgets isn't that big of a deal? Well, it's because if they acknowledge it is a big deal, they have to acknowledge something bad is about to happen. And if they acknowledge something bad is about to happen, they have to admit their role in it. And if they have to admit their role in it, they have to admit they screwed up. They have to admit that $4 billion in income tax cuts over the last 5 years was a mistake. And they have to admit that $450 million in tax cuts last year was a bad idea. And they have to admit that the $50 million voucher program was just bad policy. And they don't want to do that. And so they're going to go on telling you that the only solution is to cut. Now, that's how we got here. But we have other options, and I want to show you those, because Idaho can do better. The solution is really not that complicated. Let's look at slide 16. I told you that we went through a recession in 2009. Diane and I were there. In 2009, we did have rainy day funds, but we didn't have much. We had 641 million in rainy day funds, various accounts. That's the 2009 line. It was about 21% of our budget at the time. And we used a third the first year, a third the second year, and I can't remember whether we had to dip in the third year, Diane. But that was the plan, a third. I went and talked to the chief of staff back then, to Governor Otter, just to have him remind me what we did, and that's what he told me. In 2026, I mentioned we got all that federal money and we didn't want to build it in our budget, so we shoved a lot of it into rainy day funds. Very smart. In case we go into a recession or we have a sudden loss of revenue, here it is, $1.6 billion. If we used a third of that, it's about I'm going to do math on the fly, actually I did it here, $533 million. If we get rid of the voucher program, another 50, you are climbing up on $600 million right there. And we could put a trigger on that $450 million tax cut. We could just put a trigger on $250 million of it. In other words, it doesn't go into effect, the tax cut. So we don't get rid of it. We just say we're not putting it into effect until Idaho can afford it. And if we did that, you add another 250, you're already at 850 million. We could solve this problem really easily. Until then, good stewardship of the people's money sometimes means you just have to say no. So those are just a few solutions. Some are going to tell you the rainy day funds can't be used because we're not in a recession. There is no rule that says you can't use rainy day funds unless you're in a recession. The reason we use rainy day funds in a recession is because you have a sudden loss of revenue that you weren't expecting. You could argue we should have expected this, but that's why you use them, and you don't want to make your budgets go like this, because that's inefficient, you waste money, you shift costs to other parts of government. Some will say that it'll affect our our credit rating, also not true. Credit ratings are a lot more complicated than how much money you have in a rainy day fund. And we're not talking about using all the money. We're talking about using a third. We'll still have $1 billion in our rainy day funds. Look, during my time at West Point, my time in the military, I learned that people can accept the fact that their leaders screw up. People get it. We're all human. Nobody expects their leaders to be perfect. What they can't accept is when their leaders screw up and they won't own up to it. They don't like it when you shift the blame, when you say that black is white, up is down, bad is good. They don't like it. And they know it. And I think the people of Idaho have figured out what's going on here. They know that the legislature screwed up in how they managed the state's money, in how they managed your money, your taxpayer money. They just don't think you'll do anything about it. Well, tonight is one attempt to do something about it. I want to hear from you. This is what we can do right here, right now. There's more. There's always November. But for right now, this is what we can do, and so this is what we're going to do. I think these solutions, they're measured, they're thoughtful. Frankly, I think they're quite Idaho. It'll save our Medicaid programs, our public schools, our communities. Won't have to go through the pain, and our families won't have to go through that pain either. We can fix this problem, but legislators have to hear that they want you to use the rainy day funds. It'll get us through a year, and maybe our revenues return, but it gets us a year while we figure out more thoughtful solutions than just slash and burn. And right now, that's what the solution is that's being proposed. I really appreciate you being here. And I appreciate you listening to this, because I think you need to know it. And I think you need to share it. You need to tell people what's going on. We can do better than this. We're going to turn this around so we can take some testimony. I'm hoping that Amy, where are you? Amy and Trey. Amy's son, Trey, has got to get, there we go. He's got to get back to the house here pretty quick, so I'm hoping to put her at the front of the line if you don't mind. Other than that, we're just going to, when you see the line die down, if you want to get in it, but I hope you'll spend time with us. We're going to go till 6 o'clock. And then we'll take a break. I will stay here longer, and we'll keep videoing, but we'll take a break just because that's what we promised. We'd be here till 6, and then if people need to leave, they can leave. If those of you want to stay, we'll keep going. Amy, it'll take us a second.
All right, on the record, my name is Amy Steed. This is my son, Trey Steed. He's a 16-year-old junior at Highland High School here in Pocatello. And how Medicaid affects us, we use the Katie Beckett program. Trey was born with a brain malformation. It's called paraventricular heterotopia. And a month before Trey's 10th birthday, he started having seizures. He was then diagnosed with epilepsy. That was in 2019. January of 2020, Trey had brain surgery. He had a lobectomy, where his right frontal lobe, part of his hippocampus, and part of his cerebellum were all removed. He, after surgery, received therapy from a pediatric therapist here in town at Bloom, and he received speech, occupational, and physical therapy. He still continues to go to Bloom. He currently is having seizures again. Unfortunately, in November, his seizures started back up. He actually right now is hooked up to a EEG machine. You can see it's here. And he will be having another brain surgery. So we're doing testing to find out what kind of surgery he will receive. So Trey has a lot of medical things going on. We have private insurance through my husband's employer, but the gap between his private insurance and the expense of his medical expenses would be unbearable. We also have a 21-year-old daughter who is currently a junior at Boise State University, and we have a 10-year-old son at the is home, but he is active in sports, does baseball, football, all of the things that 10-year-old little boys should be doing. And Medicaid doesn't just help families who are living in poverty. Medicaid, through the Katie Beckett program, is able to bridge the gap for middle-class families so that we're not living in medical poverty. It is such a critical program that can affect people all across the board, not just people living in poverty. Thank you for your time.
Thanks. Thanks, Frank.
I would like to be on the record. My name is Wendy Allen. I live in Chubbuck. I also own a home in Pocatello. I have 3 adult sons with autism. By the time the oldest was diagnosed, the third one was already here, and after birth abortions are not a thing, so I had no choice but to roll with it. They are ages 27, 29, and 31. 2 of them are at home with me in a certified family home, so I get a whopping $3 an hour to take care of them. Yay me! But it is enough to give me the opportunity to take care of them. The third one is a level 3. He is extremely violent. When he was 17, I was told he was the most violent, I'm gonna cry. He was the most violent child in Southeast Idaho. We have dumped every penny we have into stabilizing him. He is in a tiny house that we bought for him here in Pocatello because he was shipped all the way to Boise. And we have him stabilized. We have not had an aggressive output in almost 6 months. His budget is almost $300,000 a year. That is just for his staff. We provide the house, we provide everything else for him. We just can't afford the staff. I have cerebral palsy in my left side. He can take me down and he can hurt me. I cannot take care of him. And I'm terrified that he's gonna be taken. And we have put everything into stabilizing our boys. We could not even afford on my husband's income their meds. Their meds would financially corrupt us. I have 2 typically developing daughters who have families of their own. My daughter came to me and asked me, Mom, what happens if the boys outlive me? What if my kids are given these boys to take care of? That's 3 generations of poverty because a system that is broken. The system is so freaking broken. But instead of burning it down, we need to fix it. My sons, all 3 of them, deserve a good life. 2 of them are in work programs. They go to work, they go to day program, giving me the time to be able to help my other son. I cook for him so he has healthy food because they don't do that. I give everything to my boys. Don't take what help I have away from me because we can't. We cannot financially support these 3 boys ourselves.
Thank you.
I would like to go on the record. My name is Kendra. I'm a resident of Idaho for over 10 years now. I want to begin with an observation that I hope everyone else has noticed. I want you to look at who's here today to speak to these families who need these critical services. But more importantly, I want you to look at who's not here. The ones who chose not to hear our stories. Representatives like Steve Miller, who suggested our family members belong in institutions rather than educational settings. Or Representative Tanner, the co-chair of JFAC, who refers to programs like Katie Beckett, speech and occupational therapy as entitlement programs. You can only dismiss these programs so easily from one of 2 positions. Either you've never needed them, which is a privileged place to stand while deciding whether others deserve access, or at some point in your life you did benefit from public support, early intervention, or disability services, and now choose to pretend that that help was never extended to you and your family. Neither position justifies turning your back on the families who need these services today. Maybe they truly don't understand what they're proposing, or maybe they're just uncomfortable being face to face with all of these people that their decisions affect. Either way, they're not here. The primary proposed cuts target community-based services, as well as speech, physical, and occupational therapy. These are not optional supports. They're essential services that directly impact whether people with disabilities can live safely, communicate, learn, work, and participate in their communities. These services are vital not only for individuals with lifelong neurological or developmental disabilities, but also for people recovering from injuries, strokes, surgeries, and acute illnesses. At any moment, any Idahoan can become temporarily or even permanently disabled. Without these services, people don't simply just go without. They decline, they lose independence, and they require more intensive medical care, and they face greater barriers to living full and stable lives. I want to take just a second to thank everyone who showed up in Boise, both representatives and the members of the community. Families and agencies were there, yeah, but so were everyday citizens. People who openly said they had no personal stake in this fight, but they cared about their neighbors. Supporting one another in hard times is something Idaho has always claimed to represent. Idaho says it values all lives, but right now it seems like that doesn't apply when those lives come with a disability or a need for support. I'm also the parent of a child who's considered profoundly disabled. My son is 8 years old. He has autism, ADHD, and global developmental delays. He's mostly nonverbal, and he struggles with things that other children his age never have to think about. I fought for his right simply to exist in public spaces. I fought for him to be allowed and participate in school, and I fought for him to be seen as a human being with value despite his disabilities. And these are things that should never have required a battle. But if I hear one more person call parents like me a hero, I'm gonna lose it. Because we're not heroes, we're parents. Parents doing everything in our power to give our children the best lives possible, just like any other parent. The difference is that we are being told, both directly and indirectly, that our children aren't worth the cost, that families like mine are too expensive to support, and that kids like my son would be better off in an institution rather than at home because a group of callous and out-of-touch politicians erroneously and incorrectly think it will somehow save money. This is what these suggested policies say, and this is what the words are communicating, and this is why we're here. We're constantly told to share our stories, to make elected officials see us as people and not numbers, but the truth is, many of them simply do not and likely will not suddenly start caring just because we speak. We've sent emails, written letters, made phone calls, shown up in person, and still, we're being told that our family's individual stories do not justify maintaining these programs, that our lived experiences are not enough. So what is enough? Is it 100 stories? 300? Clearly not. We had just as many in Boise. 1,000? What magical quote of suffering do you need to see before you recognize how deeply these decisions are hurting Idaho families? If you hold an elected office, your job is to make informed decisions that represent your constituents, and that requires listening, truly listening, to the communities that you serve. And I hope everyone here remembers this when elections come around. Pay attention to who listens and use your vote to encourage our leaders to do better for our families and our children.
My name is Amanda Worth. I'm an occupational therapist and I work at a pediatric clinic here in Pocatello. It feels strange to be here trying to convince people that kids with disabilities are important, that my job is important. I've been an occupational therapist for 13 years, and I can tell you that we as therapists live and breathe our work. It doesn't end when we go home. Sometimes I try not to cry. Everybody here knows I'm a crier. Sometimes I find myself solving a problem at 3 o'clock in the morning, the next day implementing a plan to help a child with potty training, dressing, or regulating behaviors and emotions. Sometimes I have to remind myself in the evenings to be present with my own family, because I'm still trying to work through how to help a client tolerate stimuli in his classroom for a greater period of time, or regulate her behaviors in order to participate in school field trips. These things stick with us because these kids matter and because we love them. And because we know we can help kids with physical, social, and cognitive disabilities live more independently and navigate their lives and their environments more successfully. We see these successes each day and over time see little successes turn into giant ones. Kids making friends, learning to care for themselves, participating in classroom activities, teenagers graduating, obtaining jobs, and contributing to their families and their communities. When the world sees these kids for what they can't do, we see them for what they can do, maybe now, maybe in the future, given the help that they need and that occupational, physical, and speech therapists can provide with their education and experience. I read faster. I see these kids as having infinite worth and incredible potential. But for our purposes today, I will try to see them as Governor Little and some members of JFAC seem to see them, as burdens, as financial statistics. Therapy costs money, no question there. However, the long-term costs of limiting or eliminating these services would be profound. Costs associated with emergency room care, behavioral health crises, and increased dependence on public assistance, just to name a few. Therapy services can help prevent or limit the need for these services through the establishment of skills. Okay. My take home is that, I'm not sure what JFAC and the governor consider what makes a child worth investing in. But I'm here to say that all children are worth investing in, and these kids with disabilities are not meant to be cast aside, and they deserve the opportunity to thrive.
Thank you.
Thank you. This is as on the record as I can possibly make it be. My name is Janelle Harrison. I am the Director of Special Services for the Pocatello-Chugach School District.
I think I've seen your picture on my Facebook.
You probably have. I appreciate the opportunity to stand with you and speak about Medicaid reductions and what they mean, not in theory, but in real life, for children, families, and communities across Idaho. My commitment to individuals with disabilities did not begin with my career. It began when I was a child myself, throughout my education as a child, from standing up to bullies and mean-spirited folks. Those moments shaped me. They led me into a lifetime of advocating, working, and fighting for students with disabilities. From elementary school through high school into higher education, and now as a professional serving an entire district. I want to be clear about why I'm here today. I'm not here to beg you, Senator Ruchti, to do or say anything you don't already understand. You know these issues. You have stood with communities like ours. I am here to stand next to you and to ask a critical question on behalf of this community is how do we help? How do we get in front of the people making these decisions? And what does meaningful advocacy look like right now? Because what we are facing is not just a budget issue, it's a values issue. As a community, we are fighting for people with disabilities against a government narrative that increasingly suggests they are not worth fighting for. That believes institutionalization is preferable to being loved, supported, and cared by family. Because ironically, in the same breath that it claims family values are paramount. I don't know when my time's up. I don't think it restarted, but okay. You cannot say family is everything while pushing policies that remove children and adults with disabilities from families who love them, support them, and fight for them. I'm gonna scroll down to the end. So, our children with disabilities, they are DEI. They are diverse. They are not created equally. They require different levels of support to access the same quality of life, and under current policies, they are being excluded and instead of included. I worked with many learners who require extensive therapies that keep them mobile, communicative, and regulated. Therapists who supported them as they learn how to exist in a society they do not fully understand, but desperately want to be a part of. These services are not luxuries, they are lifelines. I have so much more I could say, but I'm going to move on and just say, I want to know, how do we change the narrative from abandonment to support? From turning our backs on our most vulnerable to standing firmly beside them. I'm not here as a parent of a child with a disability. I am here as a human being, as someone who cares deeply about humanity. If we do not take care of each other, who will? If we do not speak up for the marginalized communities, who will be their voice? Thank you for being here and hearing us today and standing with us. And now I ask, let us help stand with you. And tell us where you need us to be and when, and I'll be there and garner as much support as I can. Thank you.
On the record, good evening. My name is Jessica Jones. I'm a resident of Pocatello, born and raised. I have a blended family with 6 children. 2 out of those 6 children are on the autism spectrum. My daughter Nala, 10, is semi-verbal, autism spectrum level 3 with countless other diagnoses involving brain damage that was created in utero. She, on a good day, has a comprehension of a 5-year-old, and on occasion, there's snippets of age-appropriate behavior. She's currently in the 4th grade. She didn't ask to be born this way, and this wasn't a part of the vision that I had for my motherhood journey. We didn't ask for this, it was just the way that gene pool played out, and unfortunately it wasn't in her favor. She requires a substantial amount of care and supervision. We're currently on the Katie Beckett program, developmental disability services, personal care services, as well as family-directed services. My daughter currently needs a behavior interventionist in the academic setting. She also is slotted with 10 hours of BI services outside of the academic setting. Our outside services, like behavior intervention, and our community support workers that assist Nala day to day are vital for her well-being and potential success. We attend aquatic therapy once a week, supporting Nala's coordination and communication. We have our community support worker Monday through Friday from 6 to 8 a.m. to assist Nala in getting dressed and ready for her school day. And we use 25 hours a week after school care for personal care services. My daughter requires assistance in getting dressed, brushing her teeth, brushing her hair, managing time, etc. My son, Nolan, 9, is verbal, autism level 2, and ADHD. He attends speech and occupational therapy 3 times a week. Nolan struggles with speech and comprehension, and he has a stutter and needs assistance in learning emotional regulation along with social and emotional cues, making friendships, working through anger, coping strategies when becoming overwhelmed. I'm asking you to vote no on the Medicaid budget cuts because these cuts will directly affect both of my children and countless others. Before we found these services, both of my children struggled throughout the school day. Getting Nala to school was a fight every morning. She would kick, bite, scratch, scream, and eventually elope. Transitions are something that she has difficulty with. In the local school district, instead of being a support or help for her, they would stick her in their blue room. It's a small cell-like room, padded, no windows, no outlets, no toys, low lighting, and they would leave her unattended for hours. They did this 28 times without my knowledge. She eventually brought that anxiety home, and I witnessed her self-isolate into her closet. Eventually we changed schools. We got a case manager and we found behavior intervention, and now she's thriving. She has a community support worker as well. She still has bad days, but they now outweigh the good. She goes to general education. She has a BI every day through the school year, or through the school day to help assist her to do free time and transitions. Without these services, both of my children will suffer. They'll regress in the progress that they've already made. Sorry, I'm trying to hurry. But the future of my children's lives are at risk. Their behavior logs, progress reports, and overall goals to thrive to their fullest potential are being met and amended, and they're improved so much, and they continue to work and progress because of these services. These services will assist them in becoming integrated into our communities and society, becoming law-abiding citizens, and with these services, it is possible with them. But without them, I truly don't know if they'll be okay. So please consider my children and countless others and vote no on these restrictions. Thank you.
If you have prepared remarks and you want to leave them, we will also deliver those. So just know you can bring them up here.
Hi, I'm here. My name's Laura Lyons. This is my grandson, Garrett De Silva.
Hi, Garrett.
He's 8, will be 9 in March. And the Medicaid that is being stopped for occupational therapy, speech therapy, all of these things, this young man would not be as far as he is. And he's a great kid. He wants to learn. But with them stopping, he stops. He is on a bottle, believe it or not. He drinks the drinks that they send to him every day. He's up to 18 bottles now. Okay, but he does not want to eat food. These people that help train him and teach him is imperative. I've been in the medical field for 40 years. I've worked with the vast majority of many people in wheelchairs, feeding tubes, you name it. These people are depending on these things. There's no way they're going to make it without. And these people that are teaching our children, our families, it's imperative. They must be held accountable for not having these people in our lives and being taught more for these children and the parents. I mean, they grow up to be 73 years old, some of them, right? And he's still incontinent. He's still learning how to use the restroom. He has it, they miss teaching, they recess. They go backwards instead of forwards. So it's most important. Anyway, I just want to say, I'm here living here now. I have had cancer 3 times. I'm suffering now because I'm going to be on that Medicaid board, right? Because I can't speak correctly. So now it faces not only him but me to teach him to speak correctly. So it's a vast majority of people that, and now it's more. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
On the record, my name is Kenneth Taylor.
Hi, Ken.
I thank you, Senator
How are
Ruchti,
you?
for setting this up and doing this. Thank you. So, a couple of perspectives. One, I am the sole mental health provider for the Bannock County Sheriff's Department, and so I see all the mental health that comes into the jail. And on the backside, I am the owner of Cognitive Restructuring. We offer mental health substance abuse services in the community. We're one of the larger agencies, as well as critical incident response for law enforcement. And when we look at the cuts that have already started, they've already began. The ACT team, the mobile crisis units, right? So when we have somebody in a mental health crisis in the community, and law enforcement can call in the ACT, the mobile crisis unit, and they can address that and maybe get them to the hospital, get them some services they need. Instead, where do they bring them? Is the county jail. And so we've had this stuff in the past. I've been doing this a long time. And so now our correctional facility fills up. Now they've also are making cuts on the backside. So people coming out for peer support. That's a very invaluable service. Safe and sober housing was the newest one. They just made cuts with that. And so a lot of the safe and sober houses across the state, they won't survive this. And the response that I get from the contractor was literally, well, they can go to the homeless shelter. So now we also have homeless shelters that are going to fill up, and which is also going to create a whole different dynamic. One of the important things, I work in behavior change. I'm a behaviorist. We teach clients the rash. We give them a rash. They're memorable. Responsibility, accountability, service to others, and honesty. And so what we do is we teach and we demonstrate. And it looks like our leaders are not demonstrating those things back to us. From what you described, from what we can see, there's a lack of responsibility and a lack of accountability. They're there to serve, and it doesn't appear like that's occurring. And dishonesty, lies of omission are just as dishonest in trying to hide this and deceitful stuff. And so we have people that have never been taught that, or they've lost that. We're trying to demonstrate that to them, and people in responsible positions are not doing that. And it just makes the job more difficult. So the impact on the community, on the state, the impact is hard to measure what that's going to look like, but I know that we can look back at years prior when we had the same kind of stuff going on, and we lack these services. And what happens, the correctional facilities filled up, the homeless shelters filled up. Also the cuts to the state, to the Department of Corrections and how that's going to impact, right? And so it's really going across this board. I can tell you honestly, as the owner of a facility, yes, with these cuts, we don't know if we'll be able to keep the doors open. And so what happens when the facilities, now we have less services that are provided in the community. And so the impact is great, and I truly believe, in what you stated earlier, and I appreciate your honesty with this. I believe you've always been, in your position. Yeah. Even though I stand on the opposite side of the aisle as you, I've always respected your politics, because what you're doing matters, and what you're doing is trying to help the community. And, the impact across the board with disabilities, with mental health, with substance abuse, and I don't believe we've seen anything yet. I think we've just seen the beginning of it. So I appreciate the time to speak, and appreciate everybody here that showed up. Thank you.
Who do we have here?
This is Bridger
Hi, Bridger.
and Debbie, and my name is Michelle Lance, and I'm a speech therapist.
Are we on the record or off the record?
Oh, we are on the record. Very much all on. I'm a speech therapist, and I also own a clinic here in town. Thank you for having this. And I also have many friends in this room tonight, and it infuriates me that they have to be here. They already fight for so many things in their lives,
and this is unacceptable. I agree with you, something is wrong. I just spent 3 days in Boise at the Capitol, and I can feel it, I can see it. It was reflected in several meetings with members of JFAC who were Republican. We met, we were talked at, we had little opportunity to have any input. No questions were asked of us. We were asked to provide numbers that were public record that ended conversations. And fed statements about caring about kids, caring about the elderly, with no elaboration on what they were going to do about it. I think we're being kept in the dark for some unknown reason. You'll have to correct me on these figures if they're wrong. To my knowledge, we have approximately $880 million in the rainy day fund.
1.6 billion. 1.4 to 1.7 billion. I say 1.6 billion.
And we need, to repair the budget, we need.
It depends on what anyway, but 555 million plus, so it could be as high as $1 billion.
And we learned when we were there that.
That's really hard for an attorney not to go into a bunch of detail about it.
We learned about Idaho State Law 57814 that says we can't have an excess of 15% in that rainy day fund. Is that not accurate? Anyways, so we met with Senator Groh yesterday, and he stated he wants to continue to build the fund. And that was concerning. Not only did he mention nothing about using it, he wants to keep building it. And for revenue and credit rating, and I really feel like if they're not going to use it, can they tell us what they're predicting using it for, just in any way, shape, or form, or why it can't be used, just on a much bigger level. So, thank you for your time.
My name is Bridget. On Tuesdays, I'm 16, and on Tuesdays, I was calling, give me a private day, and then, I went to school, close the day with my family, and then, thank you.
Good job, Richard.
I'm Debbie.
Well done.
Most people know me as Bridger's mom. Bridger, he doesn't like to see me cry. Bridger was born with Down syndrome, also a heart defect. When he was born, they thought he would need surgery immediately, but it was a watch and wait game. And he spent most of his infant years laying on the floor like a lump. He started attending therapy at 24 months, and he started walking at 26 months. And now he rides a bike, he skis, he swims, he bowls, but he wouldn't be able to do any of this without therapy, without people teaching him that he can do hard things. Or people to take that away from him. These kids and people, it's not their choice to be born with disabilities, but they're being punished for it. Thank you for what you could do.
Thank you.
Absolutely on the record. My name is Lisa Hong, and I am coming with many different perspectives here. I'm an occupational therapist. I own a business in Idaho Falls. I'm a part-time instructor at Idaho State University, and I'm a lifelong Idahoan. This has felt like such a personal attack to me. For the first time in my life, I have considered moving out of the state because of the disregard for this population. It's felt like an attack on my clients that I work with, their families, and my profession. I want to thank you for this today. This is the first time I've even felt any hope in what's going on. It is likely, if things pass as presented, my business will close. I don't know how it would stay open. And I may not have a year to see how things go if this passes. My business supports several therapists, occupational and speech therapists. We support many clients who are on Medicaid and many who are not. And all of those will need services somewhere. All of those therapy practitioners will need to find work. Many of them will leave the state. As I teach students in occupational therapy, I'm trying really hard not to make them panic, but their job prospect is hard when they leave. They will leave the state. And then my profession, which is so dear to my heart, I know how important it is and I know how impactful it is. There's evidence, there's studies, and there's real life scenarios. I know it's impactful, but my profession is going to also reap the negative benefit or the negative reward here. And we're gonna have to rebuild. We're gonna have to recruit. It's gonna take a lot to keep this profession going. This is not about the money for me. I'm a business owner, but I do not own a house in Hawaii. I have not even had a pay increase in 12 years because there have been no increases to Medicaid, to our budgets. So I am literally working for the same rate that I did 12 years ago. The revenue loss is huge here. Like I said, you will lose people moving out of state. You will lose people who are, all of the practitioners I work with pay taxes into the system, and we will not be able to do that anymore. We are willing as practitioners to manage things better. When we first got the 20 visit cap, that felt manageable. That felt like a challenge to be responsible, fiscally responsible. It felt like there was hope. But this feels like there is absolutely no hope. And I appreciate having a place to voice this concern. Thank you.
Hi, on the record, please. My name is Lacey Garfield, and I would like to come at this from two angles. I'm going a little off the cuff because I found out about this at 4:30. I am the mother to a 9-year-old little girl who was born at 24 weeks gestation. Almost exactly 1 year after I had triplets that died at birth. Her survival has been, she has fought to breathe, to eat, to exist. From the second she was born, I spend days wondering who is going to take care of her when I am gone. These are not stories. This is not a story that is new to anybody in this room, not a single person. And thousands more that don't know about this meeting, that don't even know about the cuts, because how did I find out about the cuts? I didn't get a notification in the mail. I found out through where I take my child to speech and also where I'm doing my rotation. My second lens is that of, I'm a graduate student in my last semester at ISU for speech language pathology. I started this program 4 years ago, and I did not do this because I was bored a little, but I wanted to help my community because I saw firsthand, I know what these services do. I know how these kids can thrive with these services. And I heard recently, and I'm going to call this woman out, Burgoyne. She has told colleagues and friends, compared services to dance lessons. And she has said, okay, well, how are you going to save us money? You are asking a population that did not create this problem to fix your problem. They did not do this. If we have
way, I mean, look at who is getting the tax cuts in this country, in this state, in our cities, and you're asking the most vulnerable population to stop existing. Like, she goes to therapy to eat, to learn to eat with her mouth. You do that without thinking about it. She has to go to therapy 4 hours a week to eat. Okay. Before I came here, I looked at my 9-year-old and I said, as long as I am breathing, she doesn't understand this. She's incredibly cool. She understands most things, but she will never be a jerk to your kids, ever, ever. And I said to her, as long as I'm breathing and as long as billion-dollar churches and billionaires are getting tax cuts, I will fight for you to get funding for basic human function. That is all.
On the record, please. My name is Chloe Longoria, and this is my son Parker, and we live here in Pocatello. I'm going to be vulnerable because the stakes are too high to stay silent. I have struggled with my mental health my whole life, battling depression and anxiety. 2 years ago, I was in a state so deep I spent months in bed fighting with the guilt of bringing a child into this world and fighting with suicidal thoughts. I worked incredibly hard in therapy to get back on my feet, but today I feel like a victim in a horror movie, screaming for someone to listen. The potential Medicaid cuts feels like a nightmare threatening to pull me back into that darkness. These services aren't luxuries. For me, they are the reason I can get out of bed and fight for my son Parker. They are his lifeline. Parker is 5 years old and he has autism spectrum disorder. Because of Medicaid-funded therapies like occupational therapy, speech and feeding therapy, and programs like Katie Beckett, Parker is learning how to navigate a world that wasn't built for him. Without this support, his care would cost, lowballing, $500 a day, an impossible burden for any family, especially a single mom. Through speech therapy, Parker is finding his voice. After years of limited speech and mostly hand guiding to communicate, he has recently told me that he loves me. And for me, that was the first time, and you can imagine how that felt. He is learning to navigate his AAC device as well as using his voice to tell us important phrases like, I need the potty or I want help. The feeding therapy helps him work on skills that he needs to eat food safely without choking, as this can be a struggle for him since he has a hard time knowing when his mouth is full and has hard time struggling with certain textures. In occupational therapy, he is currently working on fine motor skills needed, like needing to hold a pencil, color, and cut. These are all essential skills needed for kindergarten. Occupational therapy is also helping him regulate the impulses that leads him to elope. I will never forget the terror of searching for him in the dark about midnight when he was 2 years old after he unlocked three locks on our door and wandered outside. It has caused me a feeling of fight or flight, and I have never gotten rid of that feeling since. These therapies are what keeps him safe. Cutting Medicaid won't make disabilities go away. It will only strip away the tools that these kids need to survive and thrive. I would also like to remind everyone that the disability community is the only minority group that anyone is at risk of joining at any time, whether it be through an accident, illness, or birth. If these cuts happen, it puts local businesses and therapies at risk of closing, causing many who have dedicated their lives and work to helping the community out of a job. If these clinics close, children will regress and lives will be at risk, and that is not an exaggeration. Kids could die. Every day I put a smile on my face and I work with my son and I fight like hell, emailing our leaders and leaving voicemails until I am exhausted. I am tired, but I will fight tired. Please take these cuts seriously, as this transcends politics. It is about protecting our community, especially our most vulnerable. Thank you for allowing me to speak. On the record, my name is Lillian Wolstenhum and I live in Montpelier. I'm here today as a mom. I'm the mother of 4 young children and my husband is a 4th generation farmer. We work hard, but like many families, we rely on Medicaid. Not because we want to, but because we have to. I'm here to speak for my daughter, who can't talk for herself. Her name is Autumn. Living in Montpelier, we have very limited access to services. So we drive an hour and a half to Pocatello every week so Autumn can receive services at Bloom. My daughter was diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder and a severe intellectual disability at age 2. For years, she couldn't tell me what she needed or what hurt. I spent countless nights holding her while she cried for hours, not knowing how to help her. Speech therapy changed that. At first, she learned one word, just one word, it was yes. What a simple word we all learn. All babies say yes. She was 4 when she finally said her first word. She knew that one word for a full year before she started saying more words. But it was the beginning of communication. Without continued therapy, she would not have kept progressing and will not keep progressing. Her speech therapist also provides feeding therapy. For a long time, my daughter only ate yogurt at every meal. Breakfast, lunch, dinner. Yogurt. Snacks, yogurt. Sometimes an Oreo. Give or take. I tried to get her to eat anything. I spent so much money trying to get her to eat new foods. I didn't know how to do that. It wasn't until I learned about feeding therapy and got her in that I started chopping foods up and putting it in her yogurt. She started eating it, it was amazing, but still, she needed the yogurt. She gagged every single time she was fed something new. I wasn't a trained professional, and no amount of love can replace a trained professional. Because of feeding therapy, she now tries new foods and textures. She's gained weight, she's healthier, she may not eat everything, but she tries, and that's what matters. One day I hope she can eat the same foods as her siblings and feel included at the dinner table. She receives services from a BI who helps her learn to deal with her emotions instead of just screaming and throwing fits because she doesn't get away, she doesn't understand. These are things I had no idea how to help her with. Without therapy, my daughter will stop progressing and lose skills she worked so hard to gain. I am her mom and I will always do everything I can, but I am not a therapist. Parents cannot replace trained professionals. Children on Medicaid didn't ask to be on Medicaid. Families like mine are not taking advantage of the system. We are surviving because of it. If we want children with disabilities to grow, be included, and be a part of society, we cannot take away the very therapies that make this possible for them. Please protect Medicaid-funded therapy services. My daughter's future depends on it. Thank you.
My name is Cindy Fowler, and I am an intervention professional. I work with her amazing daughter. I get to see her 3 times a week. And, I can't even read. So I'm deeply committed to helping these kids and seeing them thrive. I'm also very involved as I have special needs in my family and could not imagine where they would be without the Medicaid funding, without the OT, the PT, just everybody that helps, whether it's the community that understands this population or not, and I'm totally off my list, but without these services, these kids aren't going to learn how to navigate their world. They're not going to learn those interpersonal skills. They won't even be able to become adults that can wash tables because they don't have the skills. I don't know. I find this field the most rewarding thing I could ever do with my life. It's not just giving back. It's not just helping. It goes deeper. I've learned as much from all of these kids, and some of you know me by name, some of you know me from other areas of life. I'm a giver, and I will do whatever it takes. I will be where I need to be to support these wonderful people. Because it's just so much more than a piece of paper or, okay, that's the weird kid in class, I'm not talking to them. They're not weird.
They just don't know how to show how special and unique and wonderful they really are. They depend on us as much as we depend on them to learn different things. It's not just a therapist, it's not just an interventionist. We are learning from each other, we are helping each other grow. Thank you.
Thank you.
On the record, please. My name is Stacy. I am a pediatric occupational therapist. I'm from Shelley, Idaho. I have lived in Idaho and practiced occupational therapy in the pediatric field for 15 years, and it's not just my job, it's my passion. And I love these kids, and I love these families, and that's why I'm here. But obviously the stories aren't getting through to some of our government officials, and I'm gonna go like you are and talk about numbers, since that seems to be what reaches you. So, every day I work with children with disabilities. A lot of them have autism. Many rely on Medicaid for therapy to learn how to communicate, regulate their bodies, feed themselves, participate in school and family life. I work in the schools right now. I can attest. These services are not optional, they're not foundational. When children is cut or delayed by imposed caps, and when prior authorizations don't come back in a timely manner, children lose progress, families are pushed into crisis, and costs don't disappear, they grow. Research shows that effective early therapy for children with autism can save nearly $19,000 per child. Did you hear that number? By reducing the need for more intensive and costly services later. That is real fiscal responsibility. But these cuts don't just affect families, they also affect providers. Our budget line, I saw something from our state professional organizations, has gone like this. Reimbursement rates, boom, especially recently with the 4% cut. Cost of living expenses, boom. I can attest to not having raises consistently. I had to leave a job because I hadn't had a raise in 10 years. So it's not a profession you're in for the money. The cost hurts when we don't get knowing if we're going to get paid because authorizations aren't back. When we have to reduce percentages, costs, it can't survive. We are in this because it's our passion, but we also have to survive. Clinics will close, therapists will leave the field, and suddenly families aren't just facing fewer services. If you bring them back in a few years, they're gone. There's no services at all, even when it doesn't technically exist in the future. That loss of access hurts rural communities that I know so many of our legislators are saying you are for. This is not showing that as for. This is a preventable crisis that costs way more money down the road, and you can stop this. As a therapist, I know early intervention works. As a taxpayer, I know it saves money. And as a community member, I know that balancing a budget by putting it on the backs of these children and individuals is not okay. So please remember that behind every line item is a real child, a real family, and a workforce trying to serve them. I urge you to protect Medicaid services for those who depend on them, and I can assure you that if I lose my passion of my job because of you, I will happily collect unemployment from the state. Thank you. On the record, please. My name is Kaylee Worley. I am from McCammon, and I'm here to talk to you about my son, Weston. I do want to thank you for this opportunity, giving us all the moment to talk and share a story. You're going to hear a lot of stories that probably are going to be similar, but we're all unique in our own way, and we all have a story, and we all have the right to say this. My son, Weston, he is 3 years old, and he's similar to most boys his age. He loves monster trucks, he loves playing in the dirt, and he loves the water. But Weston's special in his own way. Weston has always been somewhat delayed. He was delayed as a baby in aspects like rolling over, sitting up, crawling, walking, and talking. The November before his second birthday, Weston wasn't talking, and he hardly could walk. With guidance from his pediatrician, I sought assistance from the infant and toddler program to see if we could get additional helps for our child. We were paired up with amazing psychologists and a speech therapist and began the process of getting Weston any additional help that he could need in order to be successful. Shortly after his second birthday, we were able to get Weston tested for any developmental delays he may have. He was diagnosed with autism level 2 and a global development delay. This diagnosis didn't change who my son was, but it did help me figure out how to help him and support him in the best way possible to allow him to have that successful life that I wish he would have. Before he turned 3, we graduated from the infant and toddler program, and I began the process to get him onto the Katie Beckett program. As you're aware, getting on Katie Beckett isn't a simple process. I can't just call up the health and welfare department and say, hey, give my son Medicaid. Can't do it. It takes doctor trips, documentation, interviews in order to be accepted. But Weston was accepted. I felt such a relief because Weston had just started to blossom and we were able to see just how smart my son was. He just didn't have the tools in order to show us. We transferred over to Bloom Therapy and we started working with an occupational therapist and speech therapist. They're working with him in different aspects for his day-to-day life needs. He is working on different abilities that you and I probably take for granted every day, such as brushing your teeth, walking up and down the stairs, putting on clothing, feeding yourself, or even having a simple conversation like we're having today. Since therapy, my son is able to start to feed himself and have those conversations. He's not where he should be and he's not at the same level as his fellow peers, but the goal with therapy is to get him to have that more independent lifestyle, to be able to brush his teeth on his own, to walk up and down stairs without holding his mom's hand, to be able to get dressed on his own and be able to fully communicate his wants and needs. I understand as a parent, it's my responsibility to make sure that Weston reaches that level. Believe me when I say I work every day with him, every day, all day. But I am only one person, and I do not have the training, education, or specialty to know how to help a person with disabilities. I have a mother's instinct, and that instinct was to seek out the help of Medicaid. And I'm so thankful I did. Weston is a smart and beautiful boy, and he has come so far, but he does still have so far to go. I ask you as a citizen of Idaho, as a person, as a mom to somebody who relies on Medicaid to become our future, please do not cut Medicaid. Sure, it's possible we may see the downfall of removing Medicaid in the next year or two, but I can guarantee in the next 5-10 years when you see these children become our future, they're not going to be where they should be if we remove Medicaid. So on behalf of the state and the next generation, don't cut Medicaid. Thank you.
I would like this on the record. My name is Debbie Bolta, and I'm from Idaho Falls, and I want to thank the senator for holding this forum and for allowing someone outside of his district to speak.
You're welcome.
The camera. These are my children. They're now adults. I've spent numerous hours this week trying to get their stories out. I recently had shoulder surgery. I can't type, but I've done it and it hurts. But this is so important to me. My son is 39 years old. We've been fighting this for a long time, although the 90s were the glory days. The budget worked. It was funded. My son is currently receiving full benefit dual eligibility. He has Medicare and Medicaid. Medicare does not pay for his HCBS waiver. Medicare doesn't pay for his developmental therapy program. Medicare doesn't pay for his speech therapy program. If he loses these, he will sit at home and do nothing. On January the 22nd of this year, after 39 years of being nonverbal, my son used his new communication device to say his first words. He was in speech therapy. They were playing a game. He was building a snowman. He was using his device to show pictures of what he wanted on that snowman. He was having a good time. He was laughing. He went back. Sorry. He went back to another screen, and his therapist said, "Nobody, we need to stay on this screen to finish the snowman." He looked at her, and he looked at the screen he chose, and he pushed "you." And he waited a minute, then looked at the screen some more, and he pushed "nice." Those were my son's first words. Almost 40 years in the making. Speech therapy works. Sometimes it just takes time. Putting limits now on him isn't the answer. He needs the speech therapy. He needs to be able to have a voice. Beyond his therapy, I'm concerned about the program reductions. The speech, the OT, the PT, the developmental therapy, the orthopedics, the feeding tubes, all of those things that all of us have used at one time or another. I'm concerned about dental cuts. My son has Lennox-Gastaut syndrome. It's a severe seizure disorder. His medications alone are over $4,000 a month. If he misses just one of those medications, he will have seizures that don't stop. He will die. If they cut his pharmaceutical benefits, he will die. Please provide full funding for the HCBS waiver, for speech therapy, for occupational therapy, for all of the therapies that are allowed through the enhanced Medicaid program. The enhanced Medicaid program is something provided to developmentally disabled people, to senior citizens, to our most vulnerable citizens. Please fund that program. I'm sorry I'm taking so long. I can't. 3 years ago today, my daughter passed away. My daughter, who had everything she needed in the 90s, everything on Medicaid. She was a pioneer in that she was one of the first people in Idaho Falls to be mainstreamed in the school system with an aid. She grew up, she got married, and shortly after, she got a whammy. She was born on the autism spectrum, but she developed bipolar 1 disorder. I'm telling you, Steve Miller, anyone else who says they belong in institutions, they're not available. They are full. I am a witness to that. My daughter came an hour away from homelessness because there wasn't a bed at Switzy for her that I begged for. They aren't there. Please keep that in mind. They will be on the streets and they will die. And no budget is worth that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would love this on the record. Okay. My name is Kimberly Sykes, and I'm the mother of 4 boys, ages 3, 8, 10, and 12. Our home is loud, messy, and full of life, but it's also full of disability, constant vigilance, and love. There are sensory tools everywhere, wipes always within reach. Pull-ups are waiting because my children need them. All 4 of my sons are autistic. My husband and I are autistic as well. At one time, all of my children were non-speaking. I didn't know if I'd ever hear their voices. Because of Medicaid funded services, speech therapy, occupational therapy, behavior supports, 3 of my children now speak. Sorry, I lost my place because my eyes teared up. And 1 is learning to communicate using AAC. Those voices exist because of Medicaid. I am also a certified elementary teacher in Idaho and a support broker for families like mine. Even with my education experience, I am exhausted. I spend nights researching, filling out paperwork, and worrying if my children will be safe. If one will elope, eat something dangerous, or get hurt, parenting does not end even if they fall asleep. Medication is the only thing that makes it possible. It doesn't stop. My 3 older children qualify for a combined 70 hours a week of personal care services. These supports help keep my children safe in their home. Without them, my family would collapse. Due to Medicaid, cuts to Medicaid would not be an inconvenience. They would be catastrophic. These services are the reason my children are at home with me instead of an institution. They are the reason my children are learning, growing, and becoming part of their community. Disabled children deserve dignity, safety, and love, not to be hidden away because supports were taken. And I've been homeschooling them because the school system hasn't been able to meet their needs, and I don't want what we have to be taken away because I know it will get worse for other children. I've been lucky I have my background, but not everyone has that. My sons have dreams. I want them to grow up included, independent, and happy. I want to know they'll be okay when I can no longer care for them. Please protect Medicaid and home and community-based services. Idaho cannot afford to abandon families like mine. Please understand this clearly. Cutting Medicaid does not save money. It takes away children's voices, family stability, and their chance at a life at home. Thank you.
On the record, please. My name's Jennifer Miles. I have 4 parts to this. I'll make it quick. I have a nephew who is 16 years old who has struggled with autism since we found out he had it at age 3. I have seen him be able to get to a semi-normal life. The goal is to give these kids and people with disabilities some normalcy. So he was able to get that through occupational therapy, speech therapy, school-based programs all together at once, where now he's 16. Will he ever be able to live on his own? Probably not, but he is able to take care of himself somewhat. He has been on the cross-country team. He goes to church and does very well for considering the fact. But I contribute this to the work that our community services provide, your therapies and your school systems. The second part is I'm also a licensed clinical social worker, have been for the past 13 years in Pocatello. During that time, I have been a director of substance abuse and mental health services. And I want to say that it's not easy to go to school to get this. It's not easy to deal with these populations. It is very difficult dealing with the SPMI population. You're severely mentally ill. Your children with disabilities, their families. Their families have to go through this too. It's a lot of work for them. And it's not realistic to think, hey, they're going to be able to just take care of this child on their own and figure it out. Because when you don't know what to do, you don't have somebody showing you, it's not realistic. So I will also share that my nephew's mom, not to go back off topic, she's double degreed in business and human resources. But because she had to dedicate her time with taking my nephew to services, she has struggled with being able to keep a full-time job. So additionally, these services do help her parents be able to also live a life that can help them financially, mentally. I had heard somebody ask who takes care of our kids when they grow up. What happens to them? Well, I can tell you, I also own assisted livings that have the aged disabled in them. And guess where they go when they don't have family support and they don't have, I mean, it could be anywhere from their family passes away. It could be their family doesn't want to deal with them. This is extremely difficult and they don't know. They don't have the tools. They come to facilities like mine where you get people straight out of state hospital south. Very difficult. It is a lot of work, and we, as a community, try to work together to keep them in a normal environment for them, to show them that this is their home, that this is where they can come and be safe. It's a lot of work. We work together, us providers do. We really need to make sure that they don't cut any of these programs because it is very hard to get them back once they've been cut. It is a lot of work. Not only do you have to go after funding, you have to go through, I implemented the mental health court of Bannock County into the agency I used to work for. Into that agency, it took around 5 months to get them all implemented into that agency. So really protecting these programs that have shown to work. Can't get rid of them because you're gonna have a mess if you do. One more thing is when you work in this field and you live it, you see a whole different side than somebody who has not. That is where the disconnect is you have legislators, you have people up there making choices. They have no idea. They think it's so simple. Oh yeah, cool. No, it's not. Try dealing with somebody that's psychotic. What are you gonna do? What's society gonna do? Cut these programs, let them be out on the street? What's gonna happen? So, thank you.
Hi, I'd love to be on the record. My name is Kylie Egan. I'm here on behalf of Rowan. Rowan is my 6-year-old son, and he lights up the room. A lot of his therapists are here, and they can attest to that. But Rowan is part of the Katie Beckett program. He also has the DD funds, the disability, developmental disability funds. There we go. They cover things that Medicaid doesn't, like a bath chair, which you would think would be something we should cover. Rowan has no head control, no trunk control. He's in a wheelchair, he's nonverbal, but he is wicked smart. Wicked smart. He gets things, he sees all the therapies, music therapy. They get to have him do things that he will not do it for any other therapist because he loves music. He knows, I would say, hundreds of books. And knows if you mispronounce a word, know if you say the wrong line, know his favorite part. He is very much there and can be a great asset to our community as he ages. But without these therapies that he goes to multiple times a week, I'm a registered nurse. It's not like I have no experience. It's not like I can't help. But also, these are trained professionals that help my son in ways that I didn't even know. For example, they got him a crawl assist device. I didn't even know such a thing existed, and he flies through our house because he's able to finally move. But my favorite one was, we switched therapies recently, about 1.5 years ago, and he got a communication device, which has been seen by other kids already here. And he uses it with his eyes, actually. And there's no way I could have afforded that. It cost me almost a year's wage to afford that. And the first time, though, his speech therapist asked him, "What color is this, Rowan?" And he found the color and said, "Red." I will never forget the look on his face as he was like, yes, that's what I was trying to say. And she was like, "You're right, that is red." And every week he's got a great teacher that we change it every week of whatever he's learning and do it. And every week she's like, well, he's mastered this one. Well, he's mastered that one. And I never even knew this existed without these therapies. Without a therapist saying, hey, have you looked into this? And I said, now what is that? And I am grateful that they gave Rowan a voice. He's able to move now. He's able to talk, all because of these funds that help him go to people who know more than me. And so Rowan, as well as many of these other kids, need Medicaid, the DD funds, all these things to help them just reach their potential and do simple things that you and I take for granted. Thank
you. My name is Carly Moiai. This is on the record. I am an occupational therapist. I am a voter. I'm an Idaho resident. I'm a taxpayer. And I'm a mom. And I have spent the last few weeks spending at least once a day sending an email and making a phone call to a different legislator. I've been shocked at how few get back to me. I have not been surprised how few listen when I do talk to them. I spent the day in Boise yesterday, and the legislators I met with, I had one tell me he doesn't bother even opening his emails. He just goes ahead and deletes them because there's so many. I had one tell me they were disappointed the governor even announced any of this because they don't have a bill on the table, so none of it even matters. So why are people getting so worked up? I had another one tell me she doesn't know anything about therapy, and she's on the Health and Welfare Board. I am here as someone who hates politics, but I guess I have purpose in defending people. I am pro-life, and I believe that every baby deserves to be born. I also believe that every child deserves a life. Another legislator was explaining to me why $50 million was spent because every parent deserves a choice, and she was very strong in this. When my associate with me said, well, does not every parent deserve a choice on where their child goes to therapy? Do they not have the choice if their child gets medication? She immediately ended our meeting and escorted us out the door. That was interesting as well. I've also had parents tell me, why are they going after the weakest? Why are they going after the people without voices? And then she said, but they don't realize we are a group of parents who have been fighting for our children every day since they were born. I got in the wrong place in line because I'm between two mama bears who I love. And I love their babies. These parents are not seeking a handout. They are deeply invested, spending hours each week transporting their children to appointments and carrying therapy programs over into their homes to give their child every possible opportunity. Medicaid does not replace parental involvement. It makes therapy accessible so that parents can do everything in their power to help their child. Therapy matters to me because of my scope of practice. I believe therapy is healthcare. It's often the difference between a child being medically stable or chronically ill, being dependent or independent, or being isolated or being a part of their community. I find it offensive and uneducated to say anything different, to say that it's similar to dance lessons, or that if it matters to this is another thing the legislator said to me yesterday. Well, if therapy is so important, a parent will make it happen. I can't make this stuff up, and I have witnesses. I couldn't help but look at her and be like, are you going to say that to the parent who's quit their job to take care of their child, or the parent who has 6 kids and has to choose the one over the other 5? I invited multiple legislators to my clinic. It's not mine, it's Bloom. It's not mine, I call it mine, just like I call my babies and my moms. But truly I've invited them. I said, come, look, see. No one's taken up on my offer, but it stands as an open door. If the goal is truly fiscal responsibility, then investing in therapy for children with disabilities is the proven cost-saving path forward. Thank you.
So this is our daughter, Hallie. My name is Tiffany Vanderpool. This is my husband, Dylan. We are from American Falls. We were both born and raised in American Falls. Hallie is on Katie Beckett, and she receives the home and community-based services also, and tons of therapies. Hallie's 2.5. She has a very rare genetic syndrome called Duke 15q. We had no idea.
I'm sorry. We had no idea anything was wrong when she was born. We have 2 boys who are 12 and 9. They're completely healthy, have no issues. Well, they're preteens, but at about 6 months old, Holly started having seizures, infantile spasms to be exact. They fall under the epilepsy umbrella. She's also had tonic seizures. This is all part of her syndrome. At 7 months, Holly was life-flighted to Primary Children's. And we spent 2 months in the hospital trying to get her seizures under control. At that point, she couldn't hold her head up, she couldn't sit up, she couldn't crawl, she couldn't do anything. Fast forward a few months, we started therapies. Most of her therapists were here and are still here. Without them, she wouldn't be where she is. She has a global developmental delay. She has low muscle tone, which is called hypotonia. She is G-tube dependent. She cannot talk. She cannot eat by mouth. She cannot walk. She crawls like a little NASCAR racer.
So hold on a minute. So you've heard G-tube a lot tonight, right? Do you have any clue what it is? No. So what it is, I'll bring it up here. So she has this tube right here. It comes up.
Okay.
There's a button that goes straight into her stomach. So all of her nutrition comes through this tube. So
That's
like
how
right
she
now,
eats.
see this thing unclamped. It's supposed to be clamped. Half the time that thing comes undone, he spills milk all over. There's hell in this. Depends on which one. This one has a good caps. Okay. So when they send you don't have good caps, they pop open. But yeah, a lot of
So
kids.
this hooks in there, but where?
It goes right into her stomach.
Okay, and
And then this will be a separate pump.
Okay.
It's out in the car.
Okay.
You put her food in, and that's where she gets all her nutrition.
So Holly receives speech therapy,
Thank you.
feeding therapy, occupational therapy, and physical therapy. We go to therapy about 8 times a day. It's about a 45-ish minute drive from American Falls to get to Bloom. Without her therapy, she wouldn't be where she is, and she would regress a lot. She took 2 weeks off at Christmas and regressed. We want her to eat. We want her to succeed. We want her to walk. I remember taking her to therapy, and the very first thing I said is, I want to see her smile. And she does that now. She claps. She crawls. She cruises along the furniture. None of that would have been possible without therapy. I can help her. Her brothers help her. My husband helps her. But we aren't trained professionals. We don't know what to look for. We don't know if she's going to injure herself because she's walking funky. We don't know any of this. We can't get a different insurance for her. We're self-employed. And we have insurance through Your Health Idaho for the rest of our family. She can't get that because that's one of the rules. If you have any other insurance available, they won't let you have that, so they kicked her off. This is all she has for her meds, for her feeding supplies, for her gait trainer that we're hoping to get to help her walk. That looks like a little walker. For her feeding pump, her oxygen that she requires at night because she has sleep apnea. Holly has grit. She doesn't stop. She will push through anything and everything to succeed. So I can't stop as her mom, and I won't. But I need people to listen. These therapies aren't a choice. These are a necessity for her to survive. Holly has made it an entire year with no ER visits, no hospital stays, because she's stronger. because of therapies, because of the supports that we get. She receives home health care once a week. Without any of that, she would be in and out of the hospital constantly. We just want a chance for her to grow. She's 2.5. We just want to see her succeed and live her life to the fullest potential. If I had a choice, she wouldn't have these issues. I would wave a magic wand in a heartbeat, but I didn't have that choice. Lightning struck and we have Supergirl.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I'd like to be on the record. My name is Maria Morris. I am not an Idahoan. I grew up in Canada, but I've lived here since 2005 actually. My husband is third generation Idahoan. My daughter, who was born with Down syndrome, is fourth generation Idahoan. And my daughter Sachka is 18 years old now, and hearing this young mother, I understand that all parents want the best for their children, for them to reach their potential. My daughter was very fortunate to be in this state and get services since she was 8 months old. I would drive her to Idaho Falls and get therapy. We lived in Ketchum at that time. So right now, my daughter is a senior in high school. She is 18, so she's on, we are a certified family home. She's on self-directed services through the Katie Beckett Medicaid program. And she's an amazing person. She shines up the room. So many people who meet her describe her the same way. She just lights up the room. So, you know, she is able to communicate well and be understood because of speech therapy. She started that when she was 8 months old. And she receives physical therapy as well as counseling once a week. She has a lot of anxiety around her peers in school, and the behavioral therapy has helped her immensely. To me, she's a much more self-aware person than many other people I know because of these services. I can see that she can contribute a lot to our society, and I feel like these cuts are also a question of values, that we don't see that people who have different abilities than us as different abilities. We see them as disabled. And my daughter has brought so much to my life and to so many other people's because she has an open heart, and she's a very rare person. To me, I've never met someone who has never said a bad word about someone else. And I just know that if her services are cut, she has a tendency not to push herself, and she would be staying with her grandma in the daytime because my husband and I are working, and she would regress. And so, I'm not a political person, and I don't really understand why next election I would vote for a government who put these cuts in, and all these families here who are in similar situations, why would they vote for the same government? So it doesn't make sense to me when you, Senator Ruchti, I'm so grateful for this meeting and for the information you shared, when you're telling us that there's actually a solution to this problem that can be implemented instead of these cuts. So, I mean, it just makes sense. The other thing that, my support broker, her son has Down syndrome as well, and he's not as functioning as my daughter, she's going to have to quit her job to be able to take care of him 24/7, and she's going to have to move out of state. So this doesn't make sense. People are going to be moving out of state. The government's losing tax dollars. And all these therapists have come here who've said that they're going to be out of work and on unemployment. It does not make sense fiscally. It doesn't make sense at all. And yeah, I just encourage everyone here to vote differently next time, you know, and hopefully whoever's hearing this will take this seriously.
Next up is Jackie Paulson. Thank you. Paulson.
Is this the song or the dance?
Maybe both. Maybe both. So you can go on the record. My name is Jackie Polson, and I own and operate Pro Health Professional Home Care here in Idaho. We provide care to medically complex children, children with G-tube ventilators, children with epilepsy, and other medical diagnoses. We also provide personal care services to adults and children with disabilities and seniors. Our work allows people to remain safely in their homes where they want to be, instead of hospitals or institutions. Home and community-based services is a cost-saving measure for Idaho. For the last few years, many of you have heard from me about programs, a program called Family Personal Care Services, and about the need for reimbursement rate increases. You see, I operate a personal care agency, and I have data that shows that we consistently operate in the red because of rates. Personal care services are among the lowest reimbursed services in our system. In fact, early on, I was once told, if you want to make money, stay away from this business. So despite what some may believe, because I've actually had this said to me, no, I'm not driving a Lamborghini. And no, these parents are not living life up on the beach. They're exhausted, stretched thin, and doing everything they can to keep their children safe and at home. These kids and adults have captured my heart, and I love what I do because this care matters, and it should matter to everybody in our community. Over the past year, we've experienced a series of policy decisions that have compounded on one another. In July of 2025, Family Personal Care Services were eliminated. This program allowed parents of minor children to provide personal care services when no other provider was available. This was important because we had to prove that there was no other provider available. Parents were tasked with calling at least 2 agencies that could not staff the care and then getting approval from the department. When that option was removed, families lost consistency and stability in care overnight. You see, suddenly they had nobody to help step in for them. They couldn't go work, and I couldn't provide a caregiver. Many of those individuals are still on wait lists. Parents could no longer step in when no caregiver was available, and the workforce simply just doesn't exist. It wasn't because need disappeared, it was because staffing did. This occurred during an ongoing caregiver shortage, and one that Idaho actually documented with OPE. Then after that came the 4% Medicaid rate decrease in September. Providers across the state collected and shared data showing the impact of these changes, and what we found was alarming. 43% of the agencies in Idaho said that they would be forced to close in the next 6 to 12 months. The department reacted and put out a statement that personal care services were held harmless, that we didn't get the 4% decrease. And many believe we didn't. However, that's simply not true. Personal assistance agencies did receive a 4% decrease. It was simply one code.
It was simply what?
One code that didn't get, it was held harmless. As a result, providers were forced to offer even lower wages that were already not competitive, making an already severe workforce crisis even worse. Over the last year, I've had multiple meetings with legislators about program eliminations and reimbursement costs and cuts. At times, the same individuals discussing reductions and eliminations have also asked me to explain what these services actually are and if I could provide bullet points. That matters because home and community services are not a single budget line. They are an array of social supports that keep people out of hospitals and institutions, and they save the state money. Is there a budget issue? Absolutely. Can it be fixed? Yes. But as an Idaho taxpayer and an employer of around 100 individuals, I would challenge this approach. Bring parents and providers together and let us help solve this. We live inside these constraints every day. We need to be clear, services that exist on paper do not equal services that can actually be delivered. When reimbursement doesn't support staffing, when services like therapy, durable medical equipment, and medications are delayed by untimely authorizations, or when providers can't be retained, the result is the same as a program elimination. Care simply does not happen, and parents are left out to dry. In the process, Idaho loses its care workforce, small businesses, jobs, and state tax revenue. I think I read somewhere we employ around 5,000 caregivers in Idaho, and that's not counting the nurses or therapists. These cuts don't save money, they are shifting costs elsewhere. Families will rely more on entitlement programs. Medicaid costs rise as preventable medical emergencies increase. Families are forced to put their loved ones in out-of-state or in-state institutions. And worst of all, outcomes worsen and suffering increases. That's it.
Thank you, Jackie. And thanks for meeting with me to explain a lot of this stuff. We appreciate it.
Hi.
Hi there.
My name is Deanna Farley, and this is on record, please. I'm actually reading a statement from my grandson, Crew Jackman. And it says, my name is Crew Jackman, and I am a 19-year-old lifelong resident of Idaho, born and raised in Pocatello. I currently work as a personal caregiver for my little brother, Keaton. He has a gene duplication syndrome that has led him requiring therapy and special medical care his entire life. Throughout my life, I have gone with him to therapy sessions, emergency hospital visits, and specialist doctors, all things my family required Katie Beckett Medicaid in order to afford, which we do receive for his disability. Despite how much medical attention he requires, my little brother is so much more than his symptoms. I remember being a young kid and begging for a brother so I wouldn't be an only child. And when the time came that my parents told me my little brother was on the way and that he didn't have a name yet, I suggested Dragon Exploder. He went by that for a long time. We didn't know that Keaton would have special needs, but my family is better off for it from the lessons that raising him has taught us. He is the very heart of our family. That means all of his family. With an infectious laugh and the greatest hugs, he is the strongest and bravest person that I know. Having been in and out of the hospital more times than an MMA fighter, and always keeping his big old smile. Being his brother has taught me so many lessons in compassion, patience, and persistence. Now, in my new position as a personal caregiver, I have come to realize just how much work it really is to care for him. Constantly cleaning equipment, doing laundry, and preparing formulas. This on top of specialized equipment Keaton requires and all of his doctor's visits. As my mom says, taking care of him is a full-time job, but that job cannot be completed without Medicaid. We have received from the state of Idaho cuts to disability Medicaid would negatively affect countless families like mine. Families that depend on Medicaid to be able to care for one or more of their members. To see disabled people as something that's the support of can be cut is cruel, regardless of party lines. Disability is not something that's the support of can be, sorry about that. To see disabled people, something that, little blip here, To see disabled people as something that the support of a cut is cruel, regardless of party lines. Disability is not some alien condition. It is a part of human nature and can develop in almost anyone. Disabled people are just that, they're people. They have passions and interests, lead rich social lives, and have families just like you or me. But in order for those lives to live, they often need assistance. And cutting Medicaid directly harms them and the community as a whole. So please, I ask of you, as an Idahoan, and on behalf of the Idahoans that cannot ask, please fight for our access to Medicaid. Thank you very much.
Terry Crew, that was very well written.
I will do that.
You did a good job.
Next up, I have Jessica Jackman.
Jessica. Hi.
This is on the record.
I thought it would be.
I'll keep some of the thoughts to myself.
Yeah. We don't have the bleeping software.
Sorry about that.
I get it, girl.
Hello, my name is Jessica Jackman, and I'm a lifelong Idahoan. My family has been in Idaho for generations. I'm also a mother, niece, and cousin to people with disabilities. My aunt had a profound influence on my life. I watched her battle and succeed in living a purposeful life filled with helping others, creating artwork, and advising people in their journey with disability. My aunt has since passed, but I carry her advocacy forward as a co-founder of a nonprofit, Fair Care Idaho, dedicated to educating and improving disability care. My loved ones and countless others with disabilities give back to communities, pay taxes through income and sales tax. As a mother, I have helped my son reach goals that we were told would not happen, but have with the dedicated help of occupational, speech, and physical therapists, people who love him as their own. He brings light to a world that isn't designed for easy living if you have limitations. The proposed cuts that were provided by Governor Little's office as a way to shore up the budget are terrifying for families and people with disabilities. Adult dental, HCBS, and adult pharmacy services help my cousin AJ live with less spasticity, pain, and he can go into the community to participate in day programming. Home and community-based services provides my son with nursing care and caregiver support in the home so he can remain healthy and involved at the least costly reimbursement. Outpatient speech, occupational and physical therapy teach my son new life skills, which are provided also at the least costly reimbursement. We have already seen the removal of family caregiving services, FPCS, due to unsubstantiated claims of rampant abuse, which should serve as a canary in the coal mine for other programs. The effort to restore this service is exceptional, as I work with legislators to do just that. All of these services create employment, small businesses, and a tax base. People deserve choice in who, how, and where care is delivered. All of us will need support at some time in our lives. To ignore the humanity and cost savings that programming listed on this proposal is short-sighted, and in the long run will hurt health, state budgets, and access to health care for every Idahoan, not just those with disabilities. This money that exists in both the yearly operating costs for the state of Idaho and in the rainy day fund. As I was told, it's not called the rainy day fund. I can't remember what it is.
Budget stabilization.
There we go. I was told that yesterday by an esteemed legislator.
We can use either one, but it's, anyway,
It's the
rainy
same
day
thing.
fund. More sense.
Is there because of Idahoans and belongs to the people. Protecting the vulnerable and elderly should be a priority in any budget talk. In closing, my grandma was an RN who trained at an inpatient institution in the 40s. This was where people were sent. They didn't live in the community. She expressed to me the terror of assisting in a hysterectomy for someone with disabilities without anesthesia, because the perception at the time was that institutionalized people do not feel pain. This woman did,
and my grandma left that training after. As a society, we should work towards better, not worse. We should not remove services to balance the budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica.
Next person that signed up is Naomi Jackson.
And Jessica, thank you for meeting with me and helping to educate me on these things. Appreciate it. And I missed your name, I'm sorry.
Naomi Jackson.
Naomi.
On the record, my name is Naomi Jackson, and I'm an Idaho State University graduate student in speech therapy, and this is my last semester. Rich. And so I'm going to be entering the workforce in summer of 2026. As a future clinician, I'm deeply concerned about the impact that these proposed changes will have on Idaho families, particularly children and individuals with disabilities and those who rely on consistent medically necessary therapy services. However, I also have a personal stake, as my youngest has autism and is on the autism spectrum and has been receiving services since he was 13 months old. And I have seen firsthand how early intervention has changed his developmental trajectory. Hugh, my son's name is Hugh, sorry. Hugh's progress in his development, education, and overall quality of life is directly tied to his access to behavioral, speech, and occupational therapy. Without Medicaid coverage, the cost of these services would be financially crushing for my family and entirely out of reach. These services are not extracurricular activities. Like many Idaho families, we rely on them as medically necessary and not a convenience. I have personally sent emails, made phone calls to local legislators regarding these proposed changes, and was surprised with how often medically necessary services were minimized or compared to extracurricular activities and perhaps unnecessary. A woman that I spoke with personally over the phone, her name is Tanya Burgoyne, who knows? Anyhow, she said that parents will just have to make do, will have to figure it out. And she compared my son's therapy to dance. And that is where I know I've told many people about this conversation because how dismissive it was and how much many people don't understand what developmental services can do for a child, and it's not something that's an extracurricular activity. In fact, much of my mothering, and especially in his early years, has been in the car, driving to and from therapy, and much of my many hours working at home with my child. So anyhow, thank you for your time. And
Naomi, you'll be finished with speech therapy, your speech therapy graduate program when?
This summer.
This summer? Okay.
I walk in May, but I'm done with my externship this summer.
Okay. Great. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next person we had signed up was Amanda England.
On the record, please. I'm Amanda England, and I'm a resident of Pocatello. I am here because of my son, Tice. I actually brought him to this meeting tonight. However, he was not able to function because you guys had no therapy toys in here. So he lasted about an hour before I had Dad come pick him up. He is 6 years old, and he's an amazing little blue-eyed boy who I love very much. He is autistic, and he's nonverbal, which means he does not speak words like we can. So that's why I'm here to speak for him. Medicaid-funded therapy services have completely changed our lives. It has changed his life and my life as a parent. It has provided us with valuable tools and resources in order to help my son function in society. We're able to go out into the community and be able to function at home. Before therapy, though, I was not able to go to places. I got him involved in therapy when he was 2. Before then, I was afraid to leave my house because when I was out in public, he would have major meltdowns. And I know a lot of these moms are shaking their heads or nodding their heads because they understand what that's like. There is a caregiver burnout that comes with raising a special needs child. I have not ever heard my son say, "I love you." And that is really hard. Through therapy, though, Tice is learning to communicate in several ways. Because his brain is not able to just learn sign language, he is also learning to use what is called an AAC device. And so I'm also learning how to use that. He's picked up some sign language, and one of his main communicative ways to communicate with mom and dad is to grab our hand and lead us to things that he needs. I am so grateful for these therapists that are here today. They have taught me a lot of strategy where I am not a professional. I am learning things, how to deal with Tice and how to help regulate him and his emotions and function in society. I feel like if this Medicaid service was eliminated, you'll take away those tools and those resources, not only for my son, but also for me. We cannot afford therapy. Therapy is very expensive. And so I'm really grateful for Medicaid to help us with this. Please don't stop our progress, and please don't stop Tice from progressing as well. This is the reason why he is thriving, and I'm grateful for that. And that's all I have for now.
Is this your daughter?
It is. So this is my oldest daughter, Haley. I've got 3 older kids.
I've always, if you don't want to answer this, is fine. But I've always just been curious about siblings of kids with siblings of kids who have special needs, and I hope this isn't awkward, but I would imagine that mom and dad's attention is often focused on the special needs, sibling, and how do you navigate that? Does it bother you? Does it just become part of your life so you don't think about it? I really would like to know. I hope you're willing to.
That is a great question. Thank you for asking.
Well, I like Tice. He's very awesome, and I love him so much. And to see him progress and stuff, it's really awesome.
What's it like being out in public with Tice? What do you face?
Sometimes he screams.
Is it embarrassing? I mean, does it bother you?
Not
if
really.
you have friends around, or?
But I kind of learned how to help him and stuff, and I've watched some of his therapists come over and help him, and so sometimes I help him out like that.
Do you ever feel, is there, this is probably rude, I hope, but do you feel a little resentful sometimes that Tice, I don't know, he might take up more of mom and dad's time at a time when you need something from him? Does that ever?
Yeah, sometimes I did feel like that, but that was a little while ago. But now I learned that he needs more help, and I understand, and I get some attention too.
Thanks. Appreciate it. Okay.
All right, next up we have Ian and Carlia Lopez. I think it's actually Ian who said he was going to be speaking, correct? Maybe.
Well, we're both going to speak.
Perfect.
On the record. My name is Carlia Lopez. I am a mother of 4, living and working here in Pocatello. Every one of my children has benefited from the services currently being considered for cuts. I want to focus on my youngest, though. We noticed there was something different about him when he was just weeks old. We received services from the toddler program where they worked on speech and gross motor skills. He progressed a lot with his speech. At 3, we started working on his profound sensory seeking behaviors, and he was diagnosed with autism, ADHD, and dyspraxia just before turning 5. I was terrified about what I was going to do with my son because his preschool, where I worked, wanted to cut his hours because he couldn't handle the full day. Then in kindergarten, he was placed into an alternative classroom because his sensory needs were too much and caused issues that were beyond what the general classroom could handle. I saw a pattern and I knew that there was no alternative first grade option, but cognitively, he was able to learn. So all the services that the schools could offer were not available to him. Thanks to his incredible team of therapists, he is now in first grade and functioning. But that is with continued services and therapists who go above and beyond to help him eat, build strength, manage his sensory needs, and work on speech skills that he lacks. His eloping behavior has decreased and his speech has improved, but he still needs help to function in society. I've already had to cut many things out of my life to care for him, and I'm just barely starting to find ways to get part of that back. I am so concerned about what will happen if the support that allows him to keep progressing is cut. What will happen to my family if he isn't able to continue to grow and receive the therapies he needs? I need to work for my family's needs, but I cannot afford his weekly therapies. On top of everything else, I need to provide for my family. I believe in my children and their capabilities, but I cannot get them there on my own.
Thanks, Gordon.
On the record, my name is Ian Lopez. Even though I don't have a lifelong disability, I have 2 brothers who do. And I know at 11 years old how wrong it is to cause them to suffer because of something they can't control. If Medicaid is cut, it will cause them to suffer. It will take away services they need. I've seen people be mean to my brothers because they are different. I would hope those voted to take care of the people that voted them and would not be mean to people like my brothers, people with disabilities. I feel like I have to protect them. I wonder how they can live with themselves, knowing they can just make the most vulnerable lives so difficult, just to save some money when there are other options out there.
Did Ian prepare that?
Yes.
Well done. That was really nice.
Next up, we have Sherry Jensen.
Hi, Sherry.
Hi, sorry for the hat and everything, it's totally cleaning day. But okay, so on the record, hello, I am Sherry Jensen. Sitting over there is Zachary. He has autism level 2. He is 6 years old, and he's being tested for ADD and dyslexia. He's hyper-focused on his phone because otherwise we would have lasted about 10 minutes here, so. He did not ask for any of this. Therapy is extremely important to my son, and without it, it will affect his entire future as a competent American citizen. I am a single mom that has physical disabilities, but I do not receive disability and work as much as I can so that I can provide as much as I can to my child as possible. I was lucky enough to find a job that I could physically do and would work with a school schedule for Zach. I am only able to work while my son is in school due to his disabilities not being able to have a babysitter, mostly because of his behavior. So I am on an extremely limited budget. Without Medicaid funding his therapies, Zach is set up to fail. Zach has been going to therapy for 3 years at Bloom, and at the very beginning, he could not speak at all. He was so behind in many things compared to his kids almost half his age. He could not stack blocks at the age of 3 or put them in a line like other kids could. He could not speak or make eye contact or even focus on one subject. He was far behind in his mobility. He could not walk well. He could not jump, climb, or other tasks that were normal for his age. We were struggling on getting him to eat very much due to textures and appearances of most all foods. He was on a high nutritional shake diet to keep him at a healthy weight and good vitamin intake. We had a huge issue with communication. I continually had to guess on what he needed or wanted because he could not speak, nor did he have the proper body language or gestures. There was constant behavior issues due to our inability to communicate with each other. Can't see. I have no outside help from friends or family because they are out of state and some have passed. He is in speech therapy due to the struggle with communication. He is in the OT therapy to assist with him being able to learn life skills. He's in behavior therapy due to his frustration outbursts and emotional control. He is in food therapy so that we can try to get a balanced diet. And he is also in physical therapy to try to correct his struggle with walking, running, jumping, and being active. We have made huge progress with him, but he has a long ways to go still. He desperately needs these therapies to continue to grow and learn. He is currently enrolled in the special education program at the school, and they can attest to the necessity of these therapies for him. I do everything in my power to help him in any way I can, which is why I am here. He also needs the professional training his therapists have to grow into a capable, proper citizen and secure a real future. Do not leave my son or all the other children with disabilities behind. They are people too.
Next up is Angela Griffin.
On the record, my name is Angela Griffin. I live in Chubbuck, and I have worked with children and adults with developmental disabilities for the last 7 years. Currently, I work in behavior intervention. Are you familiar with what that is?
A little bit.
So essentially, you're increasing good behaviors and decreasing bad behaviors. So I'm able to work in the home and in the community to help learn basic skills. You can do toothbrushing at home instead of toothbrushing at OT. You can learn how to initiate conversations. You get to work with siblings, teach them how to get along, how to interact with them. Because like you said before, there is some resentment for some families, and the kids don't know how to understand that part or how to help their siblings and how they fit into the whole thing. And so I'm able to go in the home and help the family where their needs are. And then decreasing behaviors is just self-harm. If they're hurting themselves at home, if they're running away from the home, if they're breaking things, we figure out why they're doing it and teach them replacement behaviors so that they can decrease that. So yeah, I have 3 daughters.
Intervention.
Yeah, behavior intervention. Mm-hmm. I have 3 daughters, one who uses the infant and toddler program, and one who might need behavior intervention in the future. Right now, she's not having any crazy behaviors at home, so I don't have to seek out those services, but someday I might. I am concerned for the future because if she needs it and she doesn't have access to it, I would have to leave the state. I'd have to leave the state for my job. I'd have to leave the state for my family. With home and community-based services, they have measurable outcomes. We do a bunch of tests, of course, and we see where we can help them. And we take data every time we go in the home, so we know what works and what doesn't. We measure or write down what happens directly before and directly after, so we know what works and what doesn't. Let's see. With behavior intervention, skills aren't just learned in school or in a clinic. It allows kids to practice skills where life actually happens, at home, at work, and in the community. That generalization is what leads to lasting progress and reduces long-term service dependence. Just as important, home and community-based services supports the whole family. When services are consistent and coordinated, parents feel guided rather than overwhelmed. Children feel supported in their own homes. And families can gain confidence in their ability to meet daily challenges safely and successfully. If home and community-based services are cut or restricted, these safeguards and the support breaks down. The costs don't go away, they go to more expensive systems. Progress stalls, families face more crises, and long-term costs rise through avoidable emergency room visits, hospitalizations, or placements that cost the families far more. I've seen this in the work that I do. When the family gets overwhelmed, they have to seek someone outside of the home to help them. So they're losing access to helping their kid in their own home. Home and community-based services allow people to practice skills where life actually happens, not just where the services happen. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Amy. I mean, explaining it to me.
Amy, you signed up next, but we're going to let Justin go first. So, Justin Jackson.
You're Naomi's
husband. Yeah. And on the record, I wrote down my thoughts because my brain can't keep up. So, really what I want to do is start with reality and not slogans. So in Idaho, and let me just say, these numbers that I'm sharing are from what I've researched and what I've found. So could they be incorrect? Maybe. Hope not. In Idaho, Medicaid covers roughly 355,000 children and adults. That is not a marginal population. That's our neighbors, our kids, and a significant portion of the workforce that keeps the state running. And most adults on Medicaid are not disengaged from work. 74% of Medicaid adults in Idaho are working either part-time or full-time. So when this debate is framed as people just need to get a job, that argument is not addressing the population we're actually talking about. It's arguing with data. What is being proposed right now is not a targeted reform. It's a set of reductions that hit care at the exact points where people need to stay stable. The state has already implemented a 4% provider reimbursement cut. The governor's budget would make that cut permanent. On top of that, Idaho's looking at a roughly $45 million in additional Medicaid reductions in the next fiscal year, with lawmakers requesting even deeper cut scenarios beyond that. To reach those numbers, legislators were presented with a list of services that could be eliminated or reduced. That list includes home and community-based services, therapy, case management, hospice, adult dental, pharmacy benefits for some adults, and more. I want to be very clear about what those services are. They're not optional extras. Home and community-based services are what keep people out of institutions. Therapy is how children learn how to walk, speak, eat safely, and function. Case management is how medically complex individuals avoid repeat crisis. Hospice is a dignity at the end of life. Removing these services does not eliminate need, it displaces it. And that's where the core problem is with this approach. Medicaid is not a discretionary expense line, it's an interlocking system. When pressure is applied to one place, cost doesn't disappear, it migrates to the place the legislatures cannot easily cap, delay, or control. Once that migration happens, control is lost. You see it in emergency rooms, you see it in law enforcement, you see it in schools. You see it in family burnout. You see it in job loss. You see it in children falling behind in school, even in their social groups. Idaho schools are a direct example. Schools rely on Medicaid reimbursement for health-related services tied to IEPs, including therapy and nursing supports. The providers who serve schools are the same providers serving the community. When rates drop and administrative burden increases, those providers do not stay available out of goodwill, they leave. So even if the intent is we're only cutting Medicaid, what actually happens is that high needs care gets pushed onto schools and families with fewer resources, fewer staff, and fewer tools. To me, that's not efficiency, it's chaos. And it becomes worse when provider participation crosses a certain threshold. Provider exit is an irreversible trigger. When reimbursement drops below sustainability, providers do not negotiate, they leave the system. Once they leave, the legislature cannot compel them to come back through statute or appropriation workforce loss does not reverse on a budget timeline. Idaho already struggles with rural access, specialty shortages, and behavioral health capacity. The 4% cut layered into an already low reimbursement environment significantly increases the risk of provider withdrawal beyond a recoverable point. At that moment, this stops being a Medicaid policy question and becomes a capacity crisis. Service cuts alone do not reduce that demand. Eliminating adult dental does not reduce dental disease. It turns into infection, turns into hospitalization and emergency care, and we all know that those are at a far higher cost. The Department of Health and Welfare has acknowledged these risks. Once institutional placements increase, those cuts are mandatory, not optional. Federal rules attach litigation risk increases. This is just another loss of control. I also want to address the argument that rolling back Medicaid expansion will solve the budget problem. Idaho's own health agency has told lawmakers the opposite. They've projected an estimated $38 million hit tied to hospital assessment revenue, plus roughly $20 million in additional state hospital costs when the federal match disappears, but the need does not. It's not a savings, it's just cost shifting. And all of this is being proposed during Idaho's transition into a managed care Medicaid model. A managed care transition requires provider stability, predictable networks, and trust. Layering rate cuts and service eliminations onto a system redesigned dramatically increases the risk of access distribution, contract failure, and emergency corrective spending. In those scenarios, savings vanish and emergency appropriations become likely. The budget documents count savings once. They do not account for emergency department escalations, institutional care growth, rural workforce collapse, federal matching inefficiencies, litigation exposure, or forced future spending under the crisis conditions. Those are not hypothetical outcomes. They are known results in states that have tried similar approaches. So the message here is simple. These cuts are a false economy. They do not represent fiscal discipline. They represent cost acceleration with delayed visibility. Cuts happen now. Consequences show up later in a different agency, in a different budget, in a different county, in families with no remaining options. This approach does not preserve legislative authority. It shifts power to emergency rooms, institutional providers, federal regulators, and courts. This could be fiscal surrender. Idaho can pursue efficiency without destabilization. It can target waste with precision. It can protect high-value care that prevents higher-cost care. It can maintain a provider network that keeps rural communities functioning. But ripping out therapy, home and community-based services, case management, and hospice, then acting surprised when the system breaks, that's not responsible budgeting. Because it will break. It will only be a matter of time. And when it does, it will not break on lobbyists. It will break on children with disabilities. One of mine being one of those. It will break on working parents, rural hospitals, and families already stretched to the edge. So, Idaho can be responsible without being cruel. We can budget without dismantling the systems that hold our communities together. Thank you.
Amy, I know I promised it to you, but Shanti signed up, and I'll let Amy go last.
My name is Shantae Barker, and I would love to go on the record for myself and for anybody else that could not be here because they cannot leave their children, to be able to come out and do this because of the high training that they need to take care of their child. They can't just get a babysitter. They have to be very, very particular about if anybody is able to come and be in their home. I have a neighbor that has 7 children that have been adopted through foster care. And I live next door to her, and I myself have special needs children, and so I'm familiar with that world. And so she had an older biological daughter that was going to be having a baby, and because of certain complications, it could become fatal for her and for the baby. Her mother would not have been able to go there if I hadn't gone over to the house and help their daughter with their G-tube, with their feeding tube. Because parents have to be highly trained in that to be able to take care of their children. And with that little girl, I was helping her with her G-tube 3 times a day. And so, anyway, I really, really appreciated you asking that question, and I would like to challenge leaders to ask questions. This is a world that only the people that live in it know about it. And it is an extremely, extremely frustrating, stressful, overwhelming, tiring. Please, please ask questions and get to know this world. I have a daughter that she would absolutely tell you that it was incredibly hard on her to not receive the attention that she deserved. And I have 4 kids that are right now currently receiving services, and I have 2 older daughters that are more typical developing, and I ask them all the time, did you feel gypped? Did you feel hosed? And it's hard on them, but they have said, Mom, we could see that they needed more help. And so, yes, that always haunted me, and it always will. Another thing I would like to say is I've also been a foster mom, and the child that came to us also needed services. And I know that the fostering world is a very, very difficult world. Those kiddos come with extreme challenges due to substance abuse or even things that happen in utero with trauma, with abuse, with anything. Those kids come also needing the help and care that these services provide. And I guarantee that if this is lost, we will lose foster families as well, because it's extremely difficult, and a lot of those kids also need these services. My husband is a teacher, and so being privy to that world, I can also say that we will see disasters in the classroom. Teachers are already burnt out, and I guarantee that there will be an even bigger problem if children do not receive the services they need, because they are not just the children that you can look at and see and know that they would probably need some help. There's some kids that they don't look like they need any help at all, and they need lots of help. I have 4 girls that are like that. Everybody thinks they're normal until they get to know them. We recently had a son-in-law join our family, and he said, I didn't really believe in this stuff until I joined your family. And my eyes have been made wide open, and so once again, if you are not a part of this world, you do not understand this world. And so I would challenge leaders to please ask questions. Please ask people why the circles under their eyes are so dark. And please ask why people are wearing wigs because they've ripped all their hair out. Please ask people why they look so tired. And please ask them why they look so worn out with their children that are there with them. Because when people say it's a full-time job, it's not 40 hours a week. It's 24/7. And it's mentally, physically, emotionally, in every way, it is draining. Because every day you are trying to figure out your child. And the therapists come and they don't just help your child, they educate you. They educate your family. They become a part of your family because of what they are able to do and come in and do for your home and for your child. Because it is not just the child, it is the entire family. So another thing too is we will see complete difficulty in communities because these children, it does not just affect the children, it affects the entire family. We were at a point that our family was drowning and struggling, and I'm sure that lots of people in this room knows how that feels. And our family, it's still pretty chaotic. There's a lot of people that say that we need one of those cameras in our house because our house is so crazy and entertaining. But I'm sorry I lost my train of thought, but it's such a hard world. And if you don't live in it, you don't understand it. And so please ask questions. And don't stop asking questions. But we will see a decline in communities because already discouraged families, it will get worse. It will get so much worse. And so I think it's safe to say that the Medicaid is a lifeline to an already incredibly difficult situation. And so please don't take that lifeline from so many families. Thank you.
Thank you.
And besides Amy, does anybody else wish to testify?
Can I say one more thing?
Let's let Amy go first,
Yeah,
and then we'll let you
absolutely.
say. And we might have
Well,
to keep it to 2
let's have you go, and then we'll have Amy just wrap it up,
Deal.
if you don't mind.
No problem. Hey, so what I want to say, I wasn't going to say, and I don't know if it should be on record or not. I will actually let you guys decide this. I'm obviously on a lot of support groups for parents of autistic people. And a story came across one of the support groups. Actually, it's blown through all of them. The story is out of Australia, and it's about a family. They had 2 severely autistic teenage boys, and they lost all their services. They made a choice. They put their boys to sleep, and then they went to sleep. And I've seen this story come across all these pages, and overwhelmingly, so many parents here in the United States, good old US of A, have said that is the plan. So, yes, these parents are going to drown, but you have no idea how many of them are just going to go to sleep. And that's hurt. So,
Thank you. Amy?
Thank you. I'm here testifying as a tax-paying citizen who happens to be an attorney who happens to have practiced for the past 30 years in the area of disability law and disability advocacy. Early in my practice, I heard a talk given by a woman named Kathy Snow who stated the obvious: disability is natural. You are either born with it, you acquire it through your lifetime by an accident or illness, or you age into it. Disability is part of the human existence, and it touches everyone. It touches every family. It doesn't just happen on the West Bench. It doesn't just happen in the South of the United States. It doesn't just happen to people of color. It doesn't just happen to young people. It happens throughout our lifetime. And while I agree and I support and I'm with all of those stories that were shared this evening, I want to talk about the part of aging into your disability and Medicaid cuts and how that's going to affect that part of the lifespan of disability. Idaho has what's called Aged and Disabled Waiver, A&D for short. It is the largest waiver in the Medicaid program. And that program is offered to those who have been tax-paying citizens their entire life, who have voted for legislators, and now, just because of the aging process, they are not able to stay in their homes that they have paid for without assistance. This is the A&D waiver is a home and community-based service waiver. The types of services that individuals on the A&D waiver can receive after they have paid a share of cost are things like, it's called attendant care, which is the same thing as personal care services, which is a state Medicaid plan service, but when you access it on the A&D waiver, they call it attendant care. And that's where somebody can come in and they can help you. They remind you to take a shower. They help you to pick your clothes out, make sure you're getting dressed. Other services that are offered on the A&D waiver are Meals on Wheels, services to help you shovel your snow, the emergency button, I've fallen and I can't get up button, and assistance with reminding you to take your medications, making sure your medications are taken. Also to help with light house cleaning, non-medical transportation. So this is when you're aging and you can no longer drive, but you need to go out and go to the grocery store. That's part of the service through the age and the A&D waiver can offer. So my question is, or my statement is, this program is offered to Idaho tax-paying citizens who have already paid their taxes for years and years and years, and now the state is saying, well, we're not going to be there for you. And my other statement is, what is the state saying to all of the current tax-paying citizens and future tax-paying citizens? Are you going to be there for us when we age into a disability? Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you for coming and sharing your stories with us. I feel for you. I really do. And we'll continue to work at this and see if we can make a difference. And if we don't make it happen this legislative session, there's an election around the corner. And I have to tell you, if we keep sending the same people to Boise, we are going to keep getting the same results. So think about that. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you.